How are we doing, Coach Seger?
Hey, how you doing, Bryce?
Oh, not too bad. Perfect. You guys are all set. Oh yeah. Sorry about that. That won't happen during the presentation. That's our big dog. Yeah, he's Bernie's mountain dog. That's it.
Oh, those are huge, aren't they?
Yeah, he's massive. He's 115 pounds, I think.
Damn.
Yeah, he's a
big dog.
Thick dog. But no, I want to say before people start hopping on, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh no, absolutely. With going down to Georgia Tech, that was awesome, by the way. And I don't know if I can't remember if I said thank you, but I appreciate it. Let's see, yeah, that guy in, but that was phenomenally ran and it was awesome.
Appreciate that.
All right.
Good. That was a fun day.
Oh no, yeah. Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, I ended up meeting guys from all over, but I knew one of the coaches that came from Cleveland. That was when I was in I think it was in high school. He was in our area. So it's funny, I would have never thought that. So
yeah, running guys. Hopefully we can do that every year. That's the plan. It's going to hopefully get bigger and bigger and bigger as the years go by.
Yeah, I was shocked at how many people came from all over.
Yeah.
It was nuts. We thought, we flew, so it wasn't bad at all.
Yeah.
But we started meeting everyone. It's like, holy shit, people are coming from everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I was shocked when I started meeting some people, and they're like, yeah, we flew in from Michigan or Illinois, Ohio, because I'm an Indiana guy originally, so I know how far of a trip that is. And I was like, damn.
Yeah, some Chicago.
Southwestern part of the state, so down by Evansville. I'm from a town really small near Jasper, Indiana.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know where that is. I have a couple of kids that go to Evansville, so
yeah,
we go that way at least I think it's 3 times a year we try to get to a game. So
yeah, it's not a whole lot down there. So I grew up in a town of about 4,000 people. So
that's okay.
Yeah.
Thompson, where are you originally from?
Ooh, Houston, big guy.
Ooh.
Yeah, big city.
Yeah, that's a little too big. I don't know if I can do
but
that.
I'm right at home right now, like just being in Atlanta. Atlanta's like a mini Houston to me, so like I don't feel any bit of awkwardness here.
Yeah, like we were driving around and it was, it seems massive.
Right.
But when you start driving around, it's like, oh, all right, you know what? Like it's not like when you walk in Chicago, you're like, shit, I don't know how everyone does that.
Yep.
We're like 30 minutes from the city.
Yeah. I compare Atlanta a little bit to Indianapolis, I think. Just how there's a lot in a small area, and then it kind of branches out into the suburbs a little bit. It's not like super crowded like your Chicago's and Philly's and New York's. It's kind of that moderate size city.
Yeah. And I've been in Atlanta a couple times, but I've never actually spent the time driving around. So when we were there a day early, so we just drove around, walked around campus, and campus is beautiful.
Right.
And there's some big schools where I just don't like the campuses.
Yeah.
Like at Northwestern, I hated walking all the way across campus to go do some class checks, and it would take me 30 minutes to walk.
Yep.
I hate that.
I think that's what shocks a lot of people. I mean, it shocked me when I first got down here is how nice and how, when you actually get on campus, it's kind of secluded from the actual city feel. Like you see the buildings, obviously, but it doesn't feel like you're right in the middle of everything.
Yeah. I was completely shy by that. I would, the opposite. I thought it would be basically crazy.
Yeah.
And, obviously going through driving-wise, sometimes you hit all the traffic, and sometimes you wonder, I got stuck. We got stuck in Atlanta going to Florida. I think we were stuck in traffic for like 3 hours because of an accident.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, But when we went to GT, it wasn't. There was like no traffic those days we were there.
Yeah, some days is worse than others, but if you hit it on a good spot, it's not too bad at all.
No, and I was shocked by that.
Yeah.
But,
it can get real bad. Like around, you hit that thing about 3 o'clock, it's over for you.
Yeah, there was one day were we coming back? I think we were coming back after it, and I think we were stuck for it was only like 45 minutes, but it felt like forever. But not compared to the accident. Is then I think I don't know where it is, but I think it's just south of Atlanta. We got stuck. I think it was like 2 years later. We got stuck for like 6 hours, just sitting on a highway with everyone. Yeah, the helicopter. There was an accident. Helicopter had to come in and do an emergency landing and take a couple people. So that was bad.
Yeah.
And then let's see.
Bryce, when people have questions, do you want to save those for the end, or just they fire them away as they have them?
I will leave that up to you guys. I'm fine with doing it after.
Okay.
If you feel like with both of you feel like if you're moving fast, by all means, I can either chime in when a question comes, or you can go off the chat. I don't want to interrupt you too much.
Okay.
And then, if we're going fast, we can do it after. So we can kind of play it by ear, depending on what's going on. But
Perfect.
most people have done it after. We've had a couple people during, but if you guys feel like you're moving fast, by all means, we can do that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with doing it after. That works for me.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right. Well, okay, that works for me. Trying to add all these people in right now.
Okay. Just let me know when you want me to share my screen and get going.
Yeah, I will do that in 1 second. I'm just added a bunch of people, make sure everyone's muted right now. All right, so we'll get started. I'd rather start promptly than anything. First off, been able to, obviously watch a bunch of these on obviously the different side of the spectrum, someone else presenting or being a part of it. So I do want to thank our sponsors, Simply Faster, Vertimax, Gym Aware, Flex Stronger, and Rack Performance. I'd say strength coach that's, obviously probably still learning like everyone, but I had an idea of doing this and didn't think it would go anywhere like this with, obviously Coach Thompson and Coach Seger, being able to go see them when we were at Georgia Tech and then having them on here. So, it's a whirlwind of, it's an effect of everything. I say with what's going on, even with Coach Nikols, we've talked a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, and whether it's about COVID and everything else along those lines, or just what's going on in general. So I do want to say thank you to all three of you for being on. And at that, we have Coach Seger and Coach Thompson today with Georgia Tech football. They are assistant coaches for the football team at Georgia Tech. And I will let Coach Seger start it out. I appreciate it, guys. The floor is all yours.
Cool. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys. Okay. Hi, guys. So like I said, my name's Kyle Seger. and I'm assistant strength and conditioning coach at Collegiate Tech, working primarily with football. And the name of our presentation today is Building an Iron Jacket. So we're going to kind of go through the off-season program. I'm going to talk about mostly the lifting portion, and then Coach Ed will discuss the competition piece, and also the speed and change of direction and conditioning later on. So getting right into it, guys, I first want to thank you. I wanted to start off with this. Thank you, Bryce and the Legacy Performance staff for having us on today. It's a huge honor to speak to you guys, the listeners as well for taking the time out of your day, any followers and supporters of our program, and then again at the bottom, everyone who continues to be a positive example for all the athletes out there in these unprecedented times. So I just wanted to say thank you, because that's extremely important, especially right now. What I'll talk about today, like I said before, is our off-season planning and schedule, kind of our process as we plan out our both our yearly calendar and then our spring, summer, and winter program. We'll get into the pre-lift and the warm-up that we do here at Georgia Tech. A lot of it's going to be the nuts and bolts of our lifting program, and then some things that we do with our injured and modified athletes, different forms and various of testing what we do, and then a little bit I'll touch on building meaningful relationships, and both with your athletes and the coaches that you're with on a daily basis. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So our off-season program, guys, we start with a kind of a planning phase early on. So if we're going to talk January or, the beginning of the winter program, typically we'll sit down sometime around September, October, November, even as late as December, and kind of go over. We'll sit down as a staff and just go over really a plan of attack and a layout, a guideline to what we want to follow just to keep us on track. And that starts with the calendar. Let me move this out of the way. So that calendar when we sit down at the beginning of the year, it's, we decided we wanted to do 3 days a week of lifting, which I'm going to discuss, and then the 2 days a week of running that Ed will talk about. Another question that we ask ourselves is, how much time do we have? And that may seem obvious, but, if you get planning something that you end up not having time for, whether it be, your lifting being too short or too long. So we allotted about an hour and 10 minutes for our lift groups. So we know that we can't go over that time limit based on NCAA rules. And then important dates like spring ball, when does spring ball start? Preseason camp, when is that going to start? Those are important dates that you need to keep an eye on to base your training schedule off of, and whether you're going to peak during that time or get them in the correct conditioning state. And then days off. So for example, early on in January, you have Martin Luther King Day, where typically you'll have that Monday off. So that needs to go into your planning as well. And then after that, it's really just your goals and I guess you want to call it your needs analysis of determining where your program needs to head. So for us, a lot of that was basically the program we walked into. We figured out that we need a lot of hypertrophy work. We needed to gain size and put a ton of size and volume on these guys, and that's something that we sat down as a staff and determined that's what our team needed. And it's going to be different for every single team. Maybe you guys need to work more strength and power, or maybe you need to follow a general linear progression of hypertrophy and strength and power leading up to your spring ball or your preseason camp. And then again, Ed's going to touch on the speed and conditioning. And then a big one for us that we look at with our athletic trainers and our physical therapists and us as a staff is, what are some of the injuries that have been reoccurring or are pretty common within our athletes? Do you have a year where you might have 3 to 4 hamstring pulls, or if it's a shoulder, if it's a labrum, Achilles, foot injuries, whatever it is, you can't necessarily avoid or completely eliminate the risk of injury in football, but maybe things that you can change or rethink in the weight room to where you might be able to mitigate or, help lower that risk for injury, whether it be a shoulder, hip, knee, or whatever that might be. And then a big one for us too is we do a lot of self-reflecting. What went well? What didn't go well? What can we change? What can we still keep the same, but maybe change some small things that will keep it fun and exciting for the athletes with still getting the work done that we need to get done. And that leads right into that last one. How do we build and improve on the season or the time frame before, whether it's the summer, how do we improve off the winter in terms of building off of that? So going right into our typical weekly schedule, like I said, 3 days a week of lifting. Monday is typically more of our strength emphasis day, and I'll explain why here in a second. Wednesday is more of a power emphasis day where we'll see some of our Olympic progressions and Olympic variations. Friday is more of a volume-based day and with some team building worked in. And the reason we have it set up for that is Tuesday and Thursday are pretty intense running days. So we figured to have a strength day right in the middle of those two intense run days probably wouldn't be the smartest thing to do, to load those guys heavy and to tax the central nervous system that heavily sandwiched in between those two run days. So we have that strength day on Monday, the run obviously on Tuesday. Wednesday is more of a power day that we'll get into here in a second. And then Friday is a high volume team building type day that I'll touch on here in a few slides. And then the way we break it up is typically around 30 to 36 athletes per group. We like to have about 3 guys per rack when we lift. Just with the flow of the room, you'll have one guy lifting, one guy spotting, the third guy resting or doing some sort of special, which I'll get into here in a second as well. And those 3 lift group times you can see. And then Friday, we usually go offense and defense. Moving right into our pre-lift essentials. So this is when our guys first walk in the door. The very first thing we do when they walk down the tunnel and get into the back turf room of our weight room is, we probably have around 15 to 20 minutes to kill before the lift starts. So first things first, we have them take their shoes off, weigh them in, and that's tracked in an Excel spreadsheet. So we'll track their body weights pretty frequently and heavily to make sure that they're progressing on both their daily and weekly goals. And then obviously they're gaining some traction towards that long-term weight goal. And then we also have some pre-lift feeling options for those guys. So if they're sitting there for 15 to 20 minutes, knowing that our lifts are early in the morning, they may have not got up and eaten anything that morning. So we want to have some stuff setting out for them that's, pretty carb heavy to where they can snack on while they're just sitting there waiting. And that will include, I'm sure you guys have seen honey stingers, different types of fruit like apples, oranges, bananas, and then water as well. And a lot of guys try to use that water to try to get up to their optimal weight. So, and then we have a targeted list of weight gain guys, or red alert guys, what we call them, that we make sure that they grab some food while they're waiting. If they can sneak in a couple 100 calories before the lift, that's going to bode well towards their daily goal. And then the third thing we do, and this is something that, as I talked about, what can we improve on from the previous semesters, we found out that when guys were weighing in and kind of just hanging out, it's a lot of wasted time. So if a guy gets to a lift early and he's there 20 minutes early, well, let's give him something to do to fill that time so he's not just standing there, getting tight or falling asleep or yawning or whatever it is. So what we actually do is write up on a whiteboard some prehab, some corrective, and some mobility options for them to do while they're waiting. So as you can see in that picture there, James, one of our quarterbacks, is doing some hurdles, some hurdle hip mobility. We can have dead bugs and bird dogs for some core stability stuff, foam roll, trigger point for soft tissue release. Whatever it is, just give them something to do to where they're not just standing there, like I said, sleeping or laying down on foam rollers. So, and then for the quarterback specifically, we tend to give them a little bit more scap, shoulder, and T-spine heavy stuff, whether it be mobility or stability exercises, especially before our upper body specific days. And then getting right into the purpose of the warm-up. So, it's very important in our program that our guys enter the room with enthusiasm, and that's a staple in our program. We want the weight room to be a fun place to train, and still working hard and getting the work done that we need to get done. But it's very important that our guys enter the room with enthusiasm and are ready to go for the lift. And then typically we'll break up into 2 to 4 stations. Typically 3 is what we use. One of those being a mobility station. So whether that be hurdle hip mobility or just a quadruped hip series, some upper body, whether that be an overhead stick squat, just to mobilize the joints around the targeted area that we're going to use that day. So if it's a lower body day, we'll tend to do more lower body mobility work. The second station would be some kind of core or muscle activation. And that's just like you see there to prep the muscle for the work that we're getting ready to do. So whether that be some planking or physio ball, stir the pots, or some anti-rotation core exercises, and then even some, scat push-ups or different push-up position stuff to get their core firing, to get their musculature warm for the work that they're about to do. And then the third one, as you can see there, is a heart rate, blood flow, or central nervous system warm-up station. And what you'll see there is any sort of combination of footwork, ladder drills, jump rope. We'll do single leg hops, jumps, anything to get their heart rate up and to kind of excite their central nervous system, so they're firing and they're ready to go by the time we start the lift. Moving right along, guys, we're just going to go right into kind of a skeleton here of what some of our lift days actually look like. So this would be an example of kind of outlining one of our Mondays really early on in the off season. As you can see at the top, we got it's a total body lift with a little bit of a strength emphasis on that Monday. You have the 3 station warm up at the top, and you'll see in red there, number 3 is actually a competition. So in our program, competition is huge, as Ed will touch on later, and that 275 bar hold was recorded for points. So just something fun to get them competing right off the bat. Moving right along into the lift, as you can see there, going down the line, very basic to start out. This was early on in the off season. Shrugs and manual neck, just kind of a continuation of the warm up. And that neck was just flexion and extension based with a partner off of a bench. We typically try to get neck training in at least once or twice a week in our 3-day lifts, especially in the off season. And then moving right along, a staple for us this off season was we do a lot of eccentric and isometric work early on in the off season, especially weeks 1 through 3. So you can see here with the barbell squat, we gave them a range, and it was a little more specific than that. But 3 sets of 4 with 4 seconds down, or a 4-second eccentric. So making sure that they're controlling that barbell throughout the descent of that movement. And then number 3 there, again, back to some more isometric work. Supported dumbbell incline rows, 20-second hold, and then they're doing 10 reps. So they're laying on a bench, they're holding those dumbbells up at the top for 20 seconds, fatiguing their musculature, and then they do 10 reps. And those 2 things were paired up. And then as you're moving down the line, pretty basic manual hamstring curl, mini band side step, dumbbell bench press. And then if you guys can see those lines that kind of separate, so you see a line separating barbell shrugs with barbell squats. What Coach Lou actually does throughout the lift is he'll bring them up at different times and explain basically different parts of the lift. And so, for example, for that first section, after we finish the warm-up, he'll bring them up all together in the middle of the weight room. All right, guys, we have barbell shrugs and we have manual neck front and back. It's going to be on the whistle, 2 sets of 30 seconds. He'll explain how to do it, if he wants to give any certain coaching cues for that lift or for that exercise, and then he'll disperse them and we'll finish. As soon as we finish those 2 things, again, he blows the whistle, brings them up, making sure they're running up to him with enthusiasm, and then he'll explain the next portion of the lift, which is the squat and the rows. And there's a few reasons why he does that. One is that it kind of breaks them up and gives them a little bit of rest time in between some, intense exercises. And then 2, it gives them a chance to bring it up and, reinforce cues, reinforce technique, and just kind of get him in front of the players to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then moving down the list, guys, you see the team finisher at the bottom. That's a staple in our program. We'll typically have a finisher almost every day after the lift. And then at the very bottom, I'll touch on here in a second, the message of the day. This is Wednesday. So Tuesday was a run. Wednesday's another total body lift. This is more of our power emphasis day. You'll see at the top, we took body fat measurements and then competition right away off the bat, a vertical jump. And then again, core, you see dynamic mobility, and then you see the central nervous system activation with Zach there. And then getting into the lift on our power emphasis day, that first block you see there. So barbell power shrugs, same thing as a clean pull. So they're slow and controlled to their knee and then violently extending, triple extending up and through that pull portion of the movement. And we stayed pretty light for that. We kind of gave them colors to go off of. So blue, green, 2 blues, based on the kilo plates that we have in the weight room. Number 2 there, med ball seated jumps. Again, just another explosive exercise that they can do. And then the band plyo push-ups for that 3. And then moving on down the list, guys, pretty basic. This was week 1 of the off season. So if you want to call it GPP, whatever you want to call it, it kind of followed a lot of similarities to that. So rear foot elevated, we got some single leg work, barbell RDLs, and then moved into the upper body portion of the lift there with the bench press and the shoulders and all that good stuff. And then Friday, so again, Wednesday lift, Thursday was a run or a speed and agility and conditioning session. And then Fridays are very important in our program because we like to make them pretty fun. So the very first Friday was called the Keep It 100 lift, and you're going to be able to see why here in a second. So of course, starting right off the bat, 100 jumping jacks. And then every single thing that we did that day was 100 reps. Barbell shrugs for 100. And then you can see there in the red, the bench press and the trap bar deadlift were recorded for the competition. So the team with the fewest amount of sets completed, obviously it goes into the average for their team, and the team with the lowest average ends up winning the day. And then moving on down the line, the inverted row for 100 reps, shoulder press, and then so on and so forth. But days like this, guys, is it perfect periodization? Is it perfect programming? Are we sitting down just making sure every single percentage and rep is exactly perfect? No, and that's by design. We want these days to be fun. We want them the guys to compete and to have fun, but still get pretty good quality work in at the same time. So these are really important days for both our culture and just overall team building. So what we do with injured or modified guys with modified athletes, within the group. Typically, we'll have one of our strength staff members pull those guys aside. So for example, if a guy has an injured ankle, he can still bench press with the group, but then when they do lower body, he's going to be off to the side doing alternative exercises that mirror the actual lift. So for example, if we're doing squat, a barbell back squat, maybe he comes over and does a single leg pistol squat or a single leg press. And then a great way to keep those guys conditioned, because that's always a concern when a guy has either a chronic or an acute injury, is that athlete being deconditioned. So we'll use a lot of metabolic circuits for those guys, whether it be rope slams or med ball slams or any kind of circuit, just to get their heart rate up for an extended period of time while staying off that injured area. And then that last bullet point is very important too, is, you're either 2 things in our program, and it's a great teammate or a great leader. So you can still maintain that role of being a great teammate even if you are injured. And that's why we like to keep them with the group. So I'll move through this stuff a little bit quicker here. So the 4 specials of the day, we kind of sat down in the off season, and we typically had, so for example, if a group of 3 is doing a barbell back squat, one guy's lifting, one guy's spotting. That third guy used to be resting, or we would have them doing abdominals in between. What we decided is, how can we make that a little bit more efficient or effective for the athlete? So we started introducing the 4 specials of the day. And what that is, guys, is just a combination of any sort of mobility, stability, or corrective exercise that we can use to fill those kind of gaps or voids in your actual lift. And they're not super intense, so it's not a true superset of something that's extremely taxing, but it is something that may provide them a little extra work that could be beneficial. As you can see in the picture, Jaquan doing some red band external rotation. So that's something that we found to be pretty effective. And typically we'll, as you can see at the top there, either the ankle, knee, hip, or shoulder girdle are areas we like to target for that. And I'm just going to kind of go through this one a little bit quicker because Ed's going to hit on this. But like I said earlier, guys, competition is king in our program, and it's a very vital and important part of our off-season program. You saw in those lifts how we are competing almost right off the bat with the vertical jump and with the bar hold. It's very important in our program. We want our guys to compete at all times. And those drills are rewarded points, and there is always a winner and a loser. Okay, there's no participation trophies. Going quickly through player testing, these are some of the things that we test here at Georgia Tech. We test vertical jump for a couple reasons. One, to measure power, and then two, we like to look at that number for neuromuscular fatigue as well. So if we start to see a course of 4 or 5 weeks, a guy's vertical jump on a jump mat decreasing, well, then maybe it's time for us to look at our program and say, hey, are we doing too much? Maybe this athlete is overtrained, or maybe he's fatigued. Another thing we look at is the Nord board for eccentric hamstring strength and differences between their left and right hamstring. And what that tells us is, if there's a guy that has a significant strength deficit, or he's much stronger on one side, well, we know the data tells us that he may be prone to a hamstring injury. So it's good to know those up front. And then anthropometric measurements, typical stuff, height, weight, arm and neck size. And then, like I'm sure a lot of you guys have done or do, body fat percentage. And what we look at a lot is, even though a guy gains 15 to 20 pounds, well, maybe his fat mass increased pretty exponentially as well. So that weight gain necessarily may not be beneficial for that athlete. What we would like to see, and it's very hard to do, is an increase in body weight and a decrease, or kind of staying the same with their body fat percentage, because we know a lot of that weight gain was lean body mass. And then different things we test: muscular endurance. So we'll do a push-up test, or 225, like you see at the combine. We do a pull-up test. For strength test, every now and then we'll get a number on a squat or a clean. And then the speed, power, and agility, things like broad jump, pro shuttle, L drill, and the vertical jump, like I stated before. Extra work menus, guys. I got to roll quick through some of these. So we are a culture of doing extra, and that's a staple in our program. So a lot of our guys like to come back on their own and get extra work in. And instead of them kind of wandering aimlessly through the weight room trying to figure out what to do, or doing bicep curls, we like to give them packages or examples of what to do. So say a guy comes in, whether it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon after class, and he wants to get 30 minutes of extra work in, well, we have a mobility package, a flexibility package, active recovery, which is basically just a dynamic warm-up, some general strength work, or even metabolic circuits for some of our out of shape or overweight guys. And that's just extra work for them to do, so they're not just coming in doing whatever they want. Player and coach messages to the team. So if I can backtrack quickly, you'll see the message at the day of the very bottom of the lift. That's something that Coach Lou does and has been doing for a long time. And it's something I haven't seen before. And I think it's extremely valuable. Essentially, after the lift is over, either a player or a coach gets up and speaks to the team. He can say whatever he wants to, speak from his heart or give a message. But that's just an opportunity for our players to speak in front of their peers. And as you guys know, that's not necessarily the easiest thing to do for some players. And, it builds leadership and communication with your organization. And then it also can reinforce your program wide values and standards if you get multiple players getting up there and speaking about the same thing or similar messaging. So, and then again, provides real life experience, and then also an opportunity for players and even coaches to learn from, mistakes that you may have had in your past. Player interviews. So this is something Coach Lou does as well. He actually interviews every single player on the roster. And this is just to get them to know them better. And he wants to learn as much as he can about the players so that he can coach them and motivate them better. He'll ask anywhere from, questions like, what's your favorite coach you've ever had, what's your worst coach you've ever had, and why. Things about their family and, you know, how he grew up and different things that he likes and dislikes. And it's just the whole goal there, guys, is to coach Lou and for our staff to learn as much about our players as we can so we can develop those relationships, and we know how to communicate and we know how to motivate different players differently. So some guys work better with getting a little fire lit under their ass sometimes, and some guys you have to step back and take more of an analytic approach with them. And then my last slide, guys, and then I'll turn it over to Coach Ed, is I wanted to hit on this because I know there's probably some high school strength coaches maybe watching or that will see this. And I am the biggest proponent of the high school strength coach. I think it's probably one of the most important professions or jobs for an athlete in his entire career. And the reason why is the reasons listed. Your high school strength coach is most likely going to teach you your foundation for lifting. So whether it be squatting, pushing, pulling, hinging, you know, like I had there, carrying, sprinting, jumping, a lot of the things that you learn are going to be developed, and your habits that you have are going to be developed at the high school level. So whether they be good or bad, you know, as Gray Cook likes to say, it's like if you develop a bad movement pattern, it's like hitting save on a bad document or a bad Word document. Those patterns and those habits become saved over time. And if they're bad habits, they're hard to reverse. But if they're good habits, it makes our job that much easier. So if I could just, you know, I guess my 2 cents would be to prioritize movement quality over load, movement quality and proficiency. So teaching them the basic understanding of the fundamentals of squatting and pushing and pulling. Foster a positive learning environment. So make the weight room a fun place for them to go and to be and to train. And then again, the last one is just being a positive role model in their life. You know, whether a kid comes from a lot or whether he comes from a little, coming to the weight room and training for sport is probably the highlight of some kids' days. So I just ask you to not take that lightly. And without further ado, I will pass this over to Coach Ed Thompson.
Here we go. I'm going to share my screen now. There we go. Share. Here we go. Skip ahead a little bit. Here we go. All right. Now, one thing I figured out, very hard to have a strength conditioning program without the conditioning piece. So I'm going to talk about how we develop our speed, how we do our conditioning here. So we have a 2-day split. We do our running, all of our conditioning on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now we have an hour blocked off to do it all. There are some programs that, you know, they do it maybe 4 or 5 times a week. They split it up. We like to do our team runs. We like to get everybody incorporated at the same time. So right now we go at about 9 a.m. in the morning. They all have their schedule blocked off in the mornings. They don't have class until after 12, so we have all that time. But we usually only take about an hour of their time to get in everything that we have to get in. So immediately when they come in, first thing they do is foam roll. We have all of our coaches, all of our interns available for them to be able to stretch them, help them, get them loose, get them ready for whatever they got to do. We also have our nutritionists out there, like Coach Seger said, before our lifts, just like our runs, we have our nutritionists out there giving them whatever they need, whether it be snacks, whether it be Powerade, water, whatever they need, just to get their minds right, just to get their bodies ready. Because it's usually early and a lot of them don't usually have time to eat. You know, maybe they wake up too late, maybe they linger a little bit too long, so they just want to get out there and just go. So we just provide little snacks just so that they have something to eat. So when we go out there, Coach Lou, he'll have everybody just standing on the sideline. We'll have 100 to 110 guys just lined up all across the sideline. Immediately when that 9 o'clock hits, he takes off, blows the whistle. Everybody chases him because that's what we do. Like when we come in the weight room, when we attack the team run, everybody's high energy. Same thing when we attack everything 120%. We give 120 when we do everything. Effort-based program, competition is king here. So after that, we do our breakdown, and then we all go through our dynamic warm-up, and I'll get more further into that as we go on. So one thing I want to say, we're a Catapult-based program using our GPS tracking system. I won't spend too much time talking about that because that's ran by our Director of Applied Sports Science, Coach Ryan Horton. He does an amazing job at it. Dude is a wizard, a guru, whatever you want to call him when it comes to this stuff. What that helps us do is we live track all the work that's being done as it goes on. So he's able to tell us everything and every single player, as much work as they're doing. So we get to track things like total work, player load, total distance that they're running, their acceleration. So like how many times they just take off, their max velocity. So we get to see their top speed, what each player is hitting. And this is important because it helps us keep all the players safe. So say you have a guy who's hitting, I guess, 20 miles per hour, and that's his max speed, and he's hitting that maybe about 10 times. Well, now he might be in the danger zone, so Coach Horton can tell either Coach Lou, myself, any of us that, okay, hey, this guy, he's headed for his max, so maybe we need to back off of him. And that's the way we just use that. We go down the list. We use that for every single guy just to keep them safe while the work is going on, just so you don't max somebody out and overutilize them. So, and then first things first, the way we do our Tuesday run, it's our linear running day. It's our short speed endurance day. On this day, we can use our resistance, pushing and pulling sleds, A-cell, D-cell, teaching kids how to stop, teaching guys how to go. We incorporate our plyometrics. That's when we learn how to jump, how to land, how to stick, how to move. But everything that we do on Tuesday is straight ahead, straight line. We want to make sure that we don't really get into our agility until Thursday. This whole day is dedicated towards linear running, straight ahead, real short speed running. And I'll show you the skeleton of what we do. So this is our Tuesday breakdown. As I said, when we first come in, Coach Lou blows the whistle, they all chase him. And then after we do that, we go through our dynamic warm-up, we go through our static stretch, of course, and then we split up into 4 speed circuits first. So all 4 of us, myself, Coach Reed, Coach Seger, Coach Lou, we all have our stations. We split it up into about 25 to 27 guys, so we got the whole team going. I have mine, and the other coaches, they have theirs. So from there, so Coach Reed, he would have prowler sprints. So we don't usually put too much weight on it because we don't really want to max them out and just have them pulling or pushing too much. Everything we do is just trying to get the guys going, trying to get as much bang for our buck as possible. So we just go. The guys may get about 3, maybe 4 reps at the most because all of our stations are only 6 minutes long. 6-minute stations, we're in, we're out, 20 minutes max for these stations. And then Coach Seger, he has a band resistant, high knees, just teaching the guy how to go forwards, teaching the guys how to, I guess, apply force into the ground, stay upright, working on those front side mechanics to get guys to be more efficient, max speed runners. And then we have Coach Lou. He has a reaction angled get up and sprint with D-cell. So guys will start from a prone position. They'll start with their face down on the turf. The second he blows the whistle, boom, they get up, sprint about 10 yards, break down. We want to teach the guys how to break down. Everybody wants to know how to go, go, go. But if they don't know how to stop, then you're more susceptible to getting hurt. So that's what we like to emphasize on these days. And then myself, I would have maybe a quick into bursts. Guys will have like fast feet for 5 yards and then take off for 10. Just to get them moving, just to get their feet hot, just to really get them blood flow going. And then we have single leg bounds. That'd be the plyometric drill that I said that we have. So I'll just teach them. I'll demonstrate how we got to land, how we need to use our arms, how we need to really push off the ground as opposed to reaching. And then immediately after that, we have our speed competitions. Now, the way our competitions are scored, We have our position competitions, and then we have our team competitions. We have 10 teams that we have total. So you're able to get points not only for yourself for the position competition, but for your team as well. And at the end of the term, at the end of the summer, the winter, whatever term we're in, we're able to score those, and we'll have a position champion, we'll have a team champion, and guys will get a swag bag from Coach Collins, chock full of all kinds of Adidas gear that nobody has. It's pretty exclusive stuff. So guys really, really, really want to win that. The way we split that up is O-line, D-line, D-ends, the list goes on, but they'll all be on the goal line, and we'll split it up into all three of these groups. They have 3 races total to be able to win however many points for their team. So I'll sit there and I'll jot down the winners, and then Coach Seger, he'll jot down all the losers. We'll have a 10-yard sprint, we'll have an 11-yard sprint, 12-yard sprint. But all of those are from different positions. So it'd be 4-point, seated, push-up, whatever it may be. And then right after that, immediately after that, the guys will have a short water break, maybe last about 2.5 minutes or so, and then we'll get into our short speed endurance. Now that we just do very simple. Skill, wideouts, DBs, big skill, quarterbacks, running backs, linebackers, all of them, tight ends, and then O-line, D-line, of course. Now we're just going 53 straight across. The only difference is, the only discrepancy is our O-line, D-line, they only go to the second hash on the other side of the field because they don't need to run the entire way. So what we like to do is we try to kind of take some of that load off of them, just because when you're 300 pounds, it's really hard to like max out with that distance, max out with those speeds. So the way we do that, we monitor those. We might have about 3 rounds. So the second the skill gets done, big skill starts. The second big skills gets done, line starts. And then we just roll through it. We got 3 rounds on the whistle just to get guys working together, just to get guys talking to each other. At the end, competition, tug of war, your team versus your team, and then the team finishers at the end. And I'll go through that later, but that's our whole Tuesday run. And then at the very, very bottom, we foam roll. We have a mobility circuit with Coach Seger. So offense, defense, I'll take them through a foam roll circuit. Coach Seger will take them through a mobility circuit. 5 minutes each, just to make sure that guys are actually taking care of themselves, as opposed to just sending them on their way. We'd like to take care of them as much as physically possible. And then our Thursday run, our emphasis is that lateral day, our agility day, our change of direction. That's when we break out the cones, the bags, everything's reaction based. So that's our longer speed endurance days, and I love to get into that because that's honestly my favorite day. So we have a lateral shuffle into sprint with D-cells. D-cell is a main thing. It's a big thing. It's a big emphasis in everything we do. Warm-up stays the same. Stretches stays the same. 4 agility circuits. I love the lateral sprint at the D-cells because it teaches guys how to use their shin angles and break down. Therefore, we don't have as many ACL, PCL, all those knee injuries that guys usually have. Is because they're not being taught properly how to stop. So if you can do that, if you can incorporate that in all of your runs, then you have more effective athletes. And then we have a wave drill with Coach Lou, and that's just all reaction based. He points to a different direction, you go that direction. If he says backpedal, you backpedal. If he says shuffle or sprint, you sprint. All of these things, maybe about 4 to 6 reps each. Bag drills with Coach Seger, just getting guys ready to shuffle, ready to sprint, just rolling through it. And then Coach Reed will have maybe a 4-cone box drill for his cones. Nothing too fancy, nothing too simple. We actually sometimes even have fun with it. So if I want to do like a red light, green light, just like that, just to get the guys doing something different, just so they don't know, all right, here we go. We got lateral D-cells again. No, I'll just split it up and say, all right, here's what we got. Everybody face this way. We got red light, green light. On me, just listen. I'll just say red light and then green light, and then they just go. So that's just the variability that we're able to use. No sprint, no run, no workout is ever the same. We love variability. That's what we do. That's what our competition is. That's what we're built on. That's the whole meaning of the culture. We try to get guys guessing what they're going to do each and every day. So, and then for our shuttle competitions, same thing. Our competitions, we split it up the same exact way, except we try to condense the groups on Thursday a little bit more. So we'll have the line with the line, the DNs with the tight ends, LBs and running backs. We'll try to keep everybody kind of separated, but together at the same time, just so that we can get really moving. And all of that is, we're stopping, we're going 5 back, 10 back, 10 back, 5 back, pro shuttle, 5, 10, 5 drill. Nothing too simple. I mean, nothing too difficult. We don't do anything out of the ordinary. We don't do any mind-blowing things. It's just to get the guys moving. Most of all, having fun with it, because a lot of times what happens is people just go into workouts and just try to get through it. There is no getting through it with us because you don't know what you have. You have no idea how many more you have. You have no idea what the reps are. You have no idea what we're about to say or what we're about to have for you to do. You have no idea. So we just attack everything 120%. Then we have our long speed endurance conditioning. So this is awesome because I love this. I didn't put it on here, but we have our team half gassers. So same thing, skill, big skill, line. They'll take off, skill will run to the hash, and then they'll come back. Then the big skill takes off, run to the hash, back. Line takes off, run, back. And then skill immediately has to go as soon as the line gets done. So we do about 5 of those reps completely in under 4.5 minutes. If they get it done, boom, we're done. They don't, all right, guys, we got another one because everybody needs everybody. And that's the thing. That time doesn't start for the second group to run until the last man in the last group finishes through the line. So I could have my best receiver out there gutting it all out, going all out. But then if I have a straggler in the back, that's who's holding up the entire team. So we like to hold everybody accountable. We like to get everybody included on this. That way it's just not one person doing all the work or one group doing all the work, because everybody needs everybody on this team. And that's what we like to incorporate when we do absolutely everything. So a big thing that we like to do is a team finisher. So I'll talk about that. So the main aspect of that team finisher is to mentally test everybody. We don't like guys to check out of the workouts too soon. That's a main thing that a lot of coaches do. When the workout's done, we're done. Absolutely not. Because the main thing is to finish the game when the game is done. A lot of people, it's easy to check out once you see the fourth quarter is over with. And it actually happened to us last year. Last year we played the Citadel and we hung our heads a little bit just because we had to go in overtime. But that's flawed thinking. You know, what we had to do was we had to really evaluate that game and come back and understand, like, the game's not over until the game's over. And that's what our finishers are all about. The finishers are never anything physically grueling. It's all about to get you mentally thinking. So we might have 10 jumping jacks and don't count out loud number 3, 7, and 9. Guy does 9 jumping jacks and counts 9. Oh, whole team got to either start over or they didn't get the finisher that day. Everything is mental. We have our quarter turns. As you can see in the second video from the left, that's our quarter turns. We do a right, left, right. So everybody snaps down. Everybody listens to the command. Nobody speaks, nobody talks except for Coach Lou. He'll say right, left, right. Guys will go on the whistle, right, left, right. If a guy turns the wrong way, if somebody's facing each other, then that means, okay, we didn't do it right. So we got to keep doing it until we get this absolutely perfect. Guys are tired at the end of workouts, and that is the main thing that we really want to tap into. It is very, very, very hard to think when you're tired, and that's the emphasis that we want to incorporate each and every day. Think when you're tired. Think when you don't want to. Think. Football is a mental sport. You can say it's physical. There are arguments that say like it's so physical, but football is a mental sport that you have to continue to come back from each and every day, each and every play. And that's what we really try to emphasize and incorporate in everything that we do. And then, guys, I just want to say thank you for everybody who tuned in. Bryce, thank you for having myself and Coach Seger on here. You know, follow us on Twitter at StrengthGT, Coach Lou, Coach Seger, myself, Coach Reed. We're all on Twitter. We're all active. We always post some videos to help everybody get better. We're never closed off. We're always available for everybody. just to help everybody get the best advantage for their respective programs that they can possibly get. And Bryce, I'm gonna turn it back over to you, man. Can't thank you enough. This was awesome. I love it.
Oh, I appreciate it. I appreciate both of your guys' times. We do have a couple questions. So I think they'll be geared towards, both of you. What would you do with an athlete after surgery while he is still in a sling conditioning, if anything?
Ooh, I'm sorry, that one kind of broke up. Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah. What would you do with an athlete after rotator cuff surgery while he is still in a sling to keep his conditioning?
Gotcha. So what would you do with an athlete with rotator cuff surgery? I think the biggest thing to do is, you typically have, if he has surgery, you have that little time period where they're probably not allowed to sweat. So once you get cleared through their athletic trainer and doctors and physical therapists to sweat and to actually do movement, a big thing we like to do to, one is to immobilize that, whether it be an ankle, a knee, a shoulder in this case, is we do, like I said, the metabolic circuit. So if we have an assault bike or if we have a Schwinn bike, we get them on that and do, whether it be 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off, some sort of Tabata high-intensity interval workout. Maybe that's have them be seated in a chair, and if you have ropes available, getting them to slam some ropes for whatever the time limit that you want to have, 15 seconds on, 50 seconds off. But it's going to be tough for them to run because your arm rotates at your shoulder when you do run, so they wouldn't be able to do probably a whole lot of running. But any sort of seated exercise or biking to where they can elevate their heart rate for an extended period of time is typically what we do with our guys. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think that's good. And then from Scott Kuhn, in assessing CNS fatigue via weekly vertical jump testing, how do you counteract the potential of athletes to lengthen the impulse of their counter movement to elicit the same jump output and thus hide central fatigue?
Gotcha. That's a pretty good question. Honestly, we look at that as a factor. We don't necessarily take that for, it's the only way, or if a guy is 2 inches below his typical vertical jump, hey, we're not lifting today. It's not necessarily that. This is more of, hey, let's look across the board. So let's take 1 through 110, all the guys on the roster, take their averages for their vertical jump for the week and the day. And if we start to see huge deficits and or red flags where a guy is 5 inches below, or maybe the way he's jumping or landing, or just the way he looks jumping off the mat, maybe that's a discussion that we have with that guy. It's not necessarily, hey, let's back off quite yet. It's just one of the small factors that we look at, because there's only so much that you can see with, we don't have force plates. So, what portion of that movement is it lacking? It's just generally to try to get a number on the guys to hopefully that they're progressing in a linear pattern and getting a little bit more explosive or powerful. But that's a great question. I don't know if that answers it or not, but that's what we do with that.
All right. And then question 3, what is the longest distance you have your big guys run?
Ooh, I like this one because usually we don't have them running the same distance as all the smaller guys, but we might throw them like a wild card every now and then, maybe like every 2 weeks or so. So we have 6 garages in our indoor, and we open them all up one morning, maybe, and then everybody's on the sideline inside. We'll open up those garages, have them run across the field outside all the way to the other sideline. So that's roughly about 150 yards or so at the very least. And we like to either have them run all the way there, run all the way back. So they cover a lot of distance, but that's not an often thing that we do. So we like to take off that load But every now and then, we like our big guys to get a little dirty with everybody else too, just so they can feel what everybody else feels. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Ed. If we're doing, like you said, those the shuttles or the gassers or what have you for conditioning, or whether it be the sprinting, typically the bigs, if you want to put a number on it, probably about 75 to 80% of the distance that the skill guys are going to cover. So the big skill or the mid guys, your linebackers and running backs, are pretty close to distance wise with the skill, and then the bigs are probably around 80% of that. But I'd say for most part it's pretty much the same, because a lot of your short distance sprinting is 10 to 15 to 20 yards, so they can all do that. It's really just those longer conditioning or longer sprint endurance days where we're changing that.
Right, the ones at the end of the workout. So for all the competitions and stuff like that, they're all doing the same speeds, because we don't do our competitions over 15 yards. That's the most that we'll run, just because we want to keep guys safe. Very hard to get hurt going 15 yards and under. Very susceptible to getting hurt if you start talking about 53s and hundreds, like just racing in competitions and stuff like that. So we like to keep the guys as safe as possible, especially when it comes to those conditioning days and those competition days.
And then question 4, how long is dynamic warm-up on field days?
So our dynamic warm-up, it usually ranges from about 6 to 8 minutes at the most, like literally 6 to 8 minutes, just because our static stretch that we do right before, that takes about 10 minutes or so. And then we like to just get the guys' blood flowing. The second they pop up, they head to the end zone, getting that blood flowing, got them moving as fast as possible. But we want to get them moving right and getting them prepared to do what it is that we're about to do. So we'll have them shuffling, we'll have them sprinting, we'll have them breaking down, we'll have them doing everything that we would be doing within that workout. So it's only about 6 to 8 minutes, never over 10, never over 10 for that dynamic warm-up.
Okay, and then question 5 would be, do you perform a general dynamic warm-up pre-lift, or do you just perform the 2 to 4 stations pre-lift and then go into the lift?
Yeah, that's a great question. We'll do it one of two ways. Usually we'll have a dynamic aspect within those stations. So one will be more kind of just static or stationary mobility. One will be kind of stationary core or muscle activation, like glute bridges and those types of things. And then the third one, or even the fourth one, if we break it up into 4 groups, is some sort of dynamic moving to where you're doing your typical high knees, butt kicks, karaoke, shuffling. But not every day. We hope that they're doing some sort of movement before we actually get our hands on them. So that's why we really enforce, or not necessarily enforce, but we want them to be doing stuff while they're waiting in like waiting area with either the hurdles, or we'll have bands out, or some kind of active or dynamic mobility to where they're not just rolling into the lift bare bones cold. So to answer the question, yes, we will on occasion have that either in the station or before everything starts.
And then question 6, how much do you coach the single player during speed and agility days? Shin angle, etc.
So with that, we don't spend too much time coaching the individual players, unless they're at that much of a deficit to where it looks like they might get hurt. Just because we have those stations, which only last for about 6 minutes, we have those 4 stations, so we gotta get going. We like to keep everybody together, but at the same time, if somebody's still not getting it, we'll slow it down for that group, just in case they're still not understanding shin angle, they're still not understanding like center of mass, they're still not understanding how to jump, how to land, how to go through all of those movements and the progressions of those movements. So if anything, we won't risk the quality of the movement for the quantity of the rep. Like we will never do that. So if anything, if we can't get those 4 to 6 reps that we're going after, then we'll just slow it down and really teach the whole group. And we'll maybe only get about 2 reps that day. But the next time we do said drill, we'll be able to go a little further and get even more reps.
Yeah, and to add off that, it's more of you kind of give general cues or things that we're looking for as you're explaining the drill. So, for example, if I'm doing a 15-yard sled sprint or work on, acceleration out of a stance with a sled, I tell them things that I'm looking for. Hey, we want to make sure your foot's striking down and back behind your hip, a nice straight body posture, make sure you're not breaking at the hip, knee up, toe up, those types of things. And then if you see something drastically wrong with the guy, we'll kind of take 10 to 15 seconds to correct.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we don't want to stop everything just for one guy if we can fix it afterwards. That's a good question.
And then from Coach Scott Kuhn, which GPS metrics do you all use in quantifying game demands and guiding training session content to progressively approximate those demands prior to camp?
You want me to take this one, Ed?
Yeah, Coach Seger, go ahead and take that one.
So, again, like Coach Ed Thompson said, Coach Horton does a lot of this stuff, but some of the metrics that we do look at, if you're familiar at all with them, which I'm guessing by the question you are, player load is a big one. So that's generally, if I could equate that to something, that's essentially the volume of how much work they're doing. So player load is one. High speed sprint yardage is another one. So once we have their max speed, say a guy's max speed is 21 miles an hour. Well, how many times does he go over 75% of 21 miles an hour? And that will be considered a sprint. Okay. Or we can change that to 80%. And there's different bands. So 90 to 95 has its own band. 80 to 85 has its own band. How many times does he hit a rep in those certain bands? So if a guy's hitting 95% multiple times throughout practice, which is pretty good and pretty, that's a lot of work for a guy. We just want to track that. Some other things we look at are you can see how many times, it's basically a spider graph, how many times they're cutting and or accelerating and decelerating in different directions. Like if you think of a clock, so how many times to 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Other things we look at are, let's see here. I guess those would be the big ones. And then in terms of the second part of the question, and then those demands prior to camp. So what we want to do is Coach Horton will give us a number that we want to hit leading up to camp. So say we're in July of our off-season conditioning program, and we're starting to get a little bit more specific to football and to change of direction and position-specific stuff to get them in condition for camp. He'll give us a player load number that we want to hit. So basically a volume number. And so we know what the first couple of days of practices are going to look like in preseason camp. And once we get to those numbers, we know that we're close enough to where it's similar enough player load wise or high speed sprint wise to what it's going to be those first couple of days of camp. So it's just like how you periodize or how you progress in the weight room. We do the same thing with our running in the off season or in the summertime. We want to slowly progress towards what a practice load is going to be in terms of sprinting, change of direction, and those types of things. But yeah, you asked for Coach Horton's number, and good.
And then this will be the last question. We'll get to Coach Nikols after this. Do you use speed gates or speed gates often?
So we actually don't use speed gates. I mean, everything, all the infos and data that we'll need just for testing speed, for that matter, is going to be used by Catapult. Coach Horton tracks like the top speed, and we actually don't do too much testing when it comes to the field. Only thing we test is maybe we'll do pro shuttle, and that's only once a year, honestly. And we'll also do 10-yard sprints. So we never test 40s, we never test hundreds, any of that. We'll only test 10-yard sprints, and we just hand time those. So, we just make sure that we can get those as consistent as possible, just so that we have, accurate numbers, and we make the same person time that. So if Coach Lou wants to time the 10s, Coach Lou's going to time the 10s every single time, just so that the numbers aren't skewed and we get accurate numbers every single time. So.
And then adding to that, like we said, if we know a guy's top velocity or top speed, whether it's 22 or 21, and if he's running at, You know, if we want them to sprint and he's running at 75% of his max speed because we can track that during a practice or during a conditioning or a speed session, we know that he's not outputting what he needs to be outputting. And is that because of his motivation, or is that because he's fatigued and he physically can't? So those are two things to look at. Knowing their max velocity from doing flying 10s, flying 15s, or what have you in the summertime, we know at what percentage they're running at.
All right. Gentlemen, I just want to say thank you for being on. Obviously, fortunate enough to go visit you guys, like I was saying earlier. It's much appreciated for spending time with us today and going over your program and your priorities around your program. So I truly do appreciate it. And
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you.
You guys. Oh, absolutely. And then if you guys just want to give out your Twitter information again, and you guys can, we'll get you guys set up to get going. And once again, thank you for everything and sharing everything. And then we'll start to roll on to the next one. But you can find at least the strength staff. I think it's Strength GT or GT Strength on Twitter.
Right.
You can find Coach Seger and Coach Thompson on there as well. They're both always posting stuff every day. For that, gentlemen, thank you again. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure to meet you before, and it's a pleasure to have you guys on here. Thank you for your guys' time today.
Yep, appreciate it, Bryce, and thank you to all the listeners too that tuned in. We really appreciate that.
Absolutely. We'll move on to the next presentation with Coach Nikols. Hold on, Coach Nikols. Can get there real quick. There we go. It worked, yep. So Coach Nikols is from Acceleration in Naperville, Illinois. Obviously, I think I've either been there, trained there, know people that go there, and it probably goes 100 different ways. But I appreciate your time. I know you just had a baby a couple weeks ago, so hopefully everyone's safe and healthy as well. Like I've probably said 100 times to you. But started off, thank you, and I appreciate everything that you're willing to do for sorry, that's my dog. Kids all over the area. But I will let you take your stance and let you get going. So I appreciate it, Coach, and the floor is all yours.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Yeah, so if you guys hear a baby crying upstairs, you'll know why. That's why I'm heading downstairs in the basement. Give me a second real quick. I'll bring up my PowerPoint. There we go. Share. Perfect. All right, cool. Like Coach said, my name is Mike Nikols. I'm the head strength and conditioning coach at Acceleration Sports Performance in Naperville, Illinois. Before I get started, just want to share my appreciation with Coach Bryce and everything that he's doing. I think this is a crazy time for everybody, and something that we always preach to our athletes is you get better, you get worse every single day. So it's your decision what you do that day. And I think with what Coach Bryce is doing, he's not only putting an effort to make himself better every single day, but he's doing the best he can to make everybody else better by putting things up like this. So absolutely appreciative and humbled that you let me know and asked if I could be on this. So kind of getting into our presentation. Again, when Coach Bryce asked, I just got done doing some of the analytics with our combine preparation group. And earlier that morning, we were just talking about, kind of some of the obstacles and the considerations that we have to go under and how it's going to relate fairly highly to, how us coaches have to get back with our athletes once this COVID-19 is done with. There's a lot of correlations between, what we see with our NFL combine groups coming in and what you guys are going to see. So as I'm talking about this, obviously, if not training NFL combine guys, there's obviously going to be correlation between enhancing change of direction, enhancing maximal speed. But hopefully you're able to kind of look through the lens of, when your athlete's coming back, and hopefully start a conversation between yourself and your staff, and hopefully arise some questions that we can all do a really good job of bringing our athletes back into training and into competition. So real quick, do want to give thank yous. This is something I will always talk about. And it does start off with the quote on your left. It says, "The only true wisdom is to know that you know nothing." I think as strength coaches, it's something that we always have to go in, humbly knowing that everything is your own little laboratory of, putting something together and really kind of seeing how it responds to your athletes, because every athlete's going to respond differently. So making sure that there's a humbleness of knowing that there's so much more to learn, which is why I think I actively make sure I put stuff like this out here, as far as, everything that I'm going to talk to you today, everything that, I've had any conversations with anyone, generally it's been taken from someone. There's not a whole lot of literature that is coming out brand new. It is something, that the organization is big, but the lifts and the movements are fairly similar. My wife, who's a physical therapist, which we'll get into later, is, always reminding me that, the human body can only move in a certain amount of directions. So it's our job to make sure that we organize and make sure the sequencing of those directions is providing some sort of success of output. Real quick, just some of my mentors, obviously my brother, who really kind of got me into all this. Again, I'll talk about him later. He also works with me. Milo, who was my very first strength coach, is now the strength coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I like to say I did a fake internship with him, just because I was in the strength and conditioning room so much, just trying to pick his brain. He's really one of the ones that kind of let me know that this was a profession. After meeting him, I was a double major in software manufacturing engineering. I got out of it to get a little bit more specific with the strength and conditioning realm. Todd Hammer, again, another strength coach that I interned for, that I'll talk about here in a little bit. My wife, obviously, again, she's a physical therapist. She was a former strength coach. So having that resource every single day has been awesome. Obviously, my parents, who really instilled just, the focusing on the little things and making sure that everything matters, that we're always trying to get better. I think that's something as strength coaches we always try to take care. Again, you'll see you're heavily influenced, and there's a great humbleness that there's a couple of these names that I see as mentors and people that I look up to when they speak during this. So it's incredibly humbling that I may have something of importance that they can learn today. So thank you guys. Quick overview, obviously, who I am, the staff that we're going to take in that helps us with our NFL Combine prep. One of the bigger things is going to be the obstacles that we'll run into and considerations that we have to kind of go into with kind of having very little information about who we're about to work with, especially the past couple of years when we're working with a little bit more agents. We don't know a whole lot about the guys that we're about to see. And again, when we're looking at a lens coming back from COVID-19, having no idea what your athlete is doing the last 2 months, whether you think they're following the program to a T or they're doing their own thing, being able to adapt to all those considerations. How we can build work capacity in such a short little time. When we reverse engineer, which will be the next slide, we'll kind of go over the demands of what going over the combine actually is. And I do think it's a lot more work capacity, or a lot more load than what people really put out to be. Just because all they're seeing is maximal effort work. They don't realize the amount of high intense volume that it really takes to be able to output on such a day. Then we'll kind of go through our accumulation, our intensification, our realization. We'll try to tie it in with a big cooking fan. So a lot of some of the analogies that we'll be using will be tied into cooking and setting ingredients, preparing, and everything. But we'll kind of go over that and how we build on each block so to speak, to really make sure that we're getting the absolute output that we're trying to obtain come pro day. Obviously, we'll go through our results and then just the recommendations, things that, again, when we're looking at our 12-week, that 8 to 12 weeks that we get, things that I think that we definitely have to take into consideration and things that we'll kind of take a look at that have seemed to help us not only allow athletes to stay healthy for that 8 to 12 weeks that they're with us, but also perform at a very high level on the pro day. Real quick, who am I? I'm going on my 13th year, I think, as a strength and conditioning coach. Previously I've had internships, like I said, with Todd Hammer, Thomas Linsky. After that, I went to NIU under Coach Eric Klein. I've been a high school strength coach. I'm currently the head strength and performance coach of Acceleration. We train athletes anywhere from 8 all the way up to professional. And this is about the 6th year that we've been running our combine. It's been recent that we work a little bit more with agents. When we first started the NFL combine group, it was kids that we had in high school or in college that were fairly under the radar, and we kind of took a chance and thought it would be a lot of fun to really try to put some of the guys that have been with us for so long up on the map. And there's some pride being taken in with a stopwatch sport that I feel has, a strength coach or a sports performance coach has a lot more to do with than, a field sport where there's so many other variables. A lot of the variables are just cut down. So it's been a lot of fun. As we've kind of seen better results, we've been able to work with a couple more strength coach or agents, which has been, again, a lot of fun, but also a lot of different obstacles that we have to go over. Real quick, one of my most favorite quotes from Buddy Morris, again, just goes back to things such as this, the Zooms, all the books and everything the positive that's been coming on the last couple of weeks, really shows everybody's apt to want to increase their knowledge. And it's not for yourself, it's not for anyone else, it's for your athletes. And it's our job to make sure that we're developing our athletes, so it's our job to constantly have a continued education. Next, just real quick over our staff. JR, again, he's my older brother. Nice thing is, not only is he a strength
Hold on, guys. Gonna try and work on this real quick. I apologize. 1 second. Let's see. Hold on.
Again, I apologize. Something happened with my internet. Hopefully it'll eventually get itself back up. But like I said, with my older brother, does a lot with the mental prep work. He'll make sure he goes through the interview process, especially with some more higher name guys that do have to go through a very big interview process with any of the scouts and everybody. He does a great job with that. Jeff, who's another one of our strength coaches, he's in every single hour that I am, and absolutely huge asset to not only day-to-day activities. He also talks me off the ledge anytime that I'm getting frustrated about what's going on or the results that I'm not seeing. So it does absolutely amazing, especially this year with me prepping to have a baby. Anytime that I had a doctor's appointment or anything. So did an absolute amazing job with our guys. Paige is our athletic trainer. She'll see him mostly Wednesdays and some Saturdays. Does a little bit more invasive soft tissue work with them. Again, absolute amazing job. Jason's going to be our chiropractor. And then my wife and TJ, who is another one of her bosses, does all the physical therapy stuff. So if anything that, any big issues that we're going through or previous history, they're the able ones to kind of get a little bit more in depth with them and take good care of them. So again, with our staff, I always think it's a big proponent of mine to try to be the as dumb as I can in the room. And for better or worse, I think I've done a good job of making sure that, the people I have around me are absolutely incredibly intelligent on what they do and what they handle. So kind of going back to the NFL Combine data and being able to reverse engineer, I think that's something that, especially nowadays with all the GPS units starting to get really, really big, and it's making our job so much easier to figure out what the end goal is and just kind of taking steps back to really approach it in a different mindset. Again, making sure that things actually translate, making sure that we're matching volume, we're matching intensity, we're matching data. So going over those certain things has been really big to make sure that our guys not only stay healthy throughout the training sessions, but, during their combine, when you're looking at 4 hours and they're reaching on the top end of 640 sprint yards, that's a lot of load. So making sure that they have the ability, or we do our job in the next 8 to 12 weeks to make sure that they can handle that. It's something that we try to do. And we'd like to think that, we've had some very good history of, having some very healthy guys throughout pro days. Some of the weird things that I thought was interesting, especially with every rep that you have to sprint 25 yards. So that jumped up the offensive lineman, the defensive lineman's volume quite a bit. We try to reach back to all our NFL Combine guys, our pro day guys, to try to stay up to date on how many reps, how many, what it's kind of looking like. So again, a big part of our program is being able to reverse engineer some of these volumes to make sure that they're not only appropriate, but they're able to handle those speeds for that duration. Again, kind of looking at it, I feel like these are the same obstacles and considerations that we're going to be going into. Blind startup, we don't know necessarily, especially with our agents, we don't know when we're going to get the kid, or we don't know the type of shape that we're going to get them in. Did they just get done with a bowl game? Did they take the last 3 months off from, November? What have they been doing since then? Have they, most juniors, sophomores, freshmen like that are, going right back into strength and conditioning programs. Well, a lot of these kids just are going to either go do what they're doing on their own, or they're just going to be hanging out and kind of enjoying their last couple months before they, decide to start training for the combine. Injury history, motivation, and a lot of it's why are they here? Especially with us kind of going after more unheard of guys. Some guys just feel like it's what they're supposed to do, just because they had a successful career. Some, this is life and death for them. This is how they're going to support their family. So understanding their motivation allows us to kind of understand how we need to approach them, to kind of keep their arousal levels at a minimum, or not a minimum, but just as far as understanding, when we need to jack them up, when we need to calm them down to make sure that we're getting what we want out of them. Training history, training age, all that stuff, previous experience with training coaches, I think that all kind of tails into what their preconceived idea of what training is. Some do a lot of different things. Some are machine based, some are more conditioning based, some are more sprint based. Some, there's a wide variety of different strength and conditioning programs that we have to account for, and we have to try to sell our program right off the bat. And especially with NFL Combine, where the majority of the stuff is max effort, max recovery, it's very difficult to right off the bat, create a buy-in with some of those athletes that don't know who we are, to say, hey, listen, I'm going to have you sprint this 10 yards. I'm going to have you do it 8 times, but each time you're going to take a 2-minute break. So getting them to understand the why has always been big. I think one of the better things that I've heard of, as far as the strength and conditioning profession, is that our job is to be educators. So, we want to be coaches, but we also want to teach those athletes the what and the why of what they, of why they're doing something. So right off the bat, with them being able to go on Instagram and, being able to see what all their friends are doing, and you'll see a lot of stuff that, in my opinion, has zero translation to, the combine drills, but, it'll look cool. They'll have the shirts off, they'll be doing whatever. So we always kind of tell them, give us when you're looking at what we do in our exercise selection and what you're looking at everybody else do, you should ask yourself, is it building to the demands that you're looking for? Is it training a breakdown portion? So is there something that they're doing that has some sort of look to what their combine is going to look like? And the other, does it look like your combine? Obviously, we're very work capacity based and have a lot of GPP, but we do try to use, some of the terminology that we're using in a weight room and have it transfer over into the field of play, or actually when we're doing our combine. I think with lifting being a lot more slower movements, it's a little bit easier to get them to consciously understand what they're trying to talk about or what they're trying to accomplish, which is kind of the chart that you can see on the left. When they first come in, everything that they do is unconscious incompetence or conscious incompetence. They're not quite sure why they're doing it. They're just doing it because, it was told to them, or, that's just how their compensation patterns, arose. So it's kind of our job to take what they're doing right now, and getting them to get it some sort of a conscious idea, so we can actually change their techniques, so we can actually make them a little bit more efficient. Something that you'll hear us touch on a lot is self-organization or free play. We give our NFL Combine guys a ton of either free play, or we'll constrain a drill enough where I have to say nothing. If I can only have to say a couple of things of what the drill looks like and allow them to do the rest, I'm not getting that analysis through paralysis. And they're able to start self-organizing, which is now going to bring it into that unconscious competence that they just have it down so well. So again, those are a lot of the different types of considerations that we actually have to go into when preparing them, talking to them, making sure that we get to know them, and try to figure out right off the bat, which again does change the way we start to look at our accumulation phase. Next thing real quick I want to touch on is just kind of how we build our work capacity. I think it's one of those things that, we've got to make sure that we're building enough work capacity or oxidative work to allow them to have that repeated sprintability. There's enough literature that shows that the best way to increase repeated sprintability is low intense work, or matching it with the anaerobic aerobic type program. So kind of trying to figure out how we can build work capacity that isn't going to expend the currency that we have for, some of the drills that have a little bit more transfer over. We will bring in tempo work once we get into the intensification, the realization phase. We don't do extra running outside of sprint work, or wickets, or something that looks a little bit more like true linear sprinting. in the accumulation phase, because it is something that we're trying to get them to unconsciously turn that unconscious into a conscious effort, and allow them to fix any compensation patterns. I think one of the hardest things to do is to get athletes, especially field sport athletes, to get to top end speed. You look at most GPS data, you're looking at anywhere from 85 to 90% of, what maximal speed is. So it's something that they're not touching a lot. So it's something that we have to consider, that is going to expend their currency a little bit more than some of the change direction drills that they're going to do. It also, I don't want to reemphasize bad compensation patterns by having them do tempo work right off the bat. So we wait till we try to get them a little bit more efficient, and they can self-organize themselves a little bit better prior to bringing in that tempo work. But again, it's something that not only do we bring it so they can recover better throughout the pro day, but if you think of it, especially they'll have about a month later, and then they're in a OTA if they get picked up. So during the accumulation phase, we'll do a lot of sled drags. I love sled drags. I think it's a great way to build a posterior chain. I think it's a great way to recover the body. I think it's something that they can easily do. Again, I don't have to be there and hold their hand, that they're able to do. Posture walks, so any sort of farmer's carries, loaded walks, anything that builds that posterior strength, especially because a lot of the things that we'll be asking them to do, they haven't done in a long time, if not ever. Some of the angles that we got to create coming out of the 5-10-5 aren't positions that they're really going to be in a whole lot throughout the normal football or traditional football demands. Do a lot of marchers. One of the big things that we always have to look at is, the major injuries or the setbacks that, we could have right off the bat, generally with any sort of maximal velocity program or essentially bringing in a brand new sport to them. We'll see a lot of hamstring tightness, a lot of hip work, are slowly starting to get to fatigue. A lot of lower back work is big for us, just because we do usually see the lower back start to get really, really sore right off the bat. The marchers is a great way to kind of alleviate any sort of back issues. If there's a herniation or anything like that, you can do it with a belt squat. You can makeshift it, but it's something. It's a big staple, at least me personally, just because I do suffer through a lot of back issues. Something that keeps me healthy. They'll always have a minimum dosage work, whether it is reverse hypers, glute ham raises. We do a lot of triceps, just to build off the bench press. Long story short, you think most people fail on bench press, about halfway to 3/4 up wins the primary mover, and that's going to be your triceps. So we'll make sure we continue to build triceps throughout 90% of their block. And we'll slowly start to take them up once we start priming them. Intensification, we just start to drop a little bit. We'll start to bring in tempo, sled drags, more minimum dosages. We'll start to bring in smaller workouts. They'll really start to ramp up their skill work as far as positional drills. After that, the realization phase, they're doing tempo and their football drills. So we cut out some of the stuff that is a little bit more GPP based, just because, again, if I'm looking at my currency rate of how much I can spend on a certain motor skill, I don't want to take away from the most important things. Chart on your left is Bondarchuk's exercise classification. We try to stay fairly consistent, or at least know what part of that movement that they're doing and where it falls within that line. It's my fully belief and how I was brought up that no matter how you want to look at the weight room, it's always going to be GPP or a developmental exercise at most. But understanding how to bring in some crossover effect, but also, very general neural enhancement is absolutely imperative, in my opinion, when it comes to resistance training. So kind of getting into the heart of things, the way we kind of set up our program, like I said, it's an accumulation phase, which is going to be highly GPP. you're going to see more lifts. So we start out with 7 lifts in accumulation phase. We'll drop down to 5 during the intensification. We'll bring in more maintenance into a 3. So 3 movements and they're out. Again, when we're looking at, I can only expend so much per day to really get the desired results I want. I got to start getting more specific as we get closer to that combine. Going in from there, you know, the way we kind of build our warm up is we'll start very, very general heat. You know, what we try to do is we stay very, very general as we're moving on from our accumulation. We'll slowly start adding more specific, more change of direction movements, things that start to look a little bit more through the eyes of, you know, what the pro day looks like. And we'll slowly start bringing some of the general movements out. So we try to, again, even make our warm-ups a little bit more general to specific to really kind of heat up the proper movement patterns and sequencing that we're looking at. Next thing, again, if we kind of overview, Monday, it's very general, what you kind of see most pro days. Monday is going to be more start work, so 0 to 20 yards. We'll get more of a higher CNS loaded, so more of a lower body lifting day. Your Tuesday is going to be your change of direction, so your 5-10-5, your L-tone, your pro agility. We'll also slowly start to bring in one of those days as their pure skill work. We try to keep our change of direction low. It is a little bit more mechanical, so we're able to have some sort of high-low mentality towards it when we're just looking at more motor units being developed. Again, that's why you'll see more upper body day, just because less motor units are used, which means I can place my higher intensity days a little bit further apart. Wednesday, they'll see Paige. They'll do all their soft tissue work. They'll do their low intense conditioning, minimum dosage work. So Paige will kind of take care of them as far as anything that they need taken care of throughout the week. It'll be a little bit more intensive on the soft tissue work, which again, she does an absolute amazing job. And, you know, for whatever reason, the volume that I hit or something that they got a little bit more sore than what they should have been, she's able to take care of it and kind of restart that recovery pattern a little bit better. It is a note that we tend not to bring in a whole lot of different recovery modalities. We try to just really persuade them to eat, sleep, move to increase those recovery. We will bring in, you know, more dry needling, cryotherapy, whatever they kind of feel like they need or what they want. We'll bring it in more on their back off weeks, but only just to test to see if they know it works. We'll hold on to it. Again, if the body's going to adapt to anything that we present it, that includes recovery. You know, regardless on how you want to look at what the literature is on ice baths. You know, first time we ever get in an ice bath and we get out of it, you know, 20 minutes later, once we cool back down or heat back up, I should say, you feel amazing. But if you do that day after day after day after day, those effects start to be a little bit less. And we really start to see that, you know, the whole law of diminishing returns come into play. So we try to really promote more natural styles of recovery. And hopefully we're doing a good job on our side of making sure that load is correct, that we're not destroying them and we're allowing them to recover on a day-to-day basis, but making sure that, you know, by the next time that they're hitting a sprint day, that they're fully recovered. On their Thursdays, that's when we'll slowly start to see more wicket-based. So we will bring in wickets. We do supersets. A lot of things that, you know, I'd like to do would be separate blocks, but just because of the time constraints that we have, we're looking at we'll kind of superset. So we'll superset some wickets along with flying tens or what we'll call blinks, just to kind of get a measure out as far as, you know, trying to, again, turn that unconscious effort into a conscious effort back into a correct unconscious effort. Wickets are absolutely amazing for that self-organization. The way we try to set it up is they'll get through the wicket. We'll have a time delay system. they'll be able to kind of see what they look like. Again, we try to speak as little amount as possible and let them figure it out. I think that in having the short amount of time, taking care of the right type of constraints within a drill, allowing them to have that free player self-evaluation is a big reason why I think they get better results quicker, is because they're fully understanding what makes them successful and not successful for every drill. We're kind of looking at, and I did not mention our main lifts, we are very heavily gym aware based. So everything they do on their main list is very predominant on their gym aware. It makes our life so much easier. I can give them a somewhere on the force velocity curve, and we work up and hit it. From there, we'll stay fairly consistent with the prevalence chart, whether we're on the low end or optimal or the high end. But the gym aware makes it so much nicer. Again, if we're looking at, I can only expend a certain amount of currency. If I wear them out, or if we're having a great day and I'm able to hit a little bit more volume on a Thursday, I know that my lifting is going to take a back seat. So using the gym aware has made our life so much easier. We'll use a lot of just Brian Mann's literature and his research as far as it. So, and again, I did skip over our main lift as far as our lifting. On our Mondays, we'll box squat heavily. Box squatting for us is nice because, again, it allows us to open up that stance a little bit more. It does tend to recover them quicker, just because we're not getting that impulse or that amortization phase as much. And again, which is nice, it allows me to get more of that stretch reflex, or that elasticity where it matters, and that's going to be in the sprinting. On our Thursdays, it's going to be a little bit more strength speed dominant. We'll slowly start to move out of it more on a speed strength movement to enhance a little bit more starting strength. Again, another backdoor of being able to get some neural drive, to get some fast twitch fibers being recruited. It's also a great way that I can slowly build that work capacity, getting them used to, providing a maximal output, little rest, more maximal output. So again, it's very nice for us to use that dynamic day. We also do see a very high carryover in our vertical jump. I think if I were to have to say what, we get our best results on, I'd probably say our vertical jump, not only in just absolute highest touch, but, obviously within each drill, there's cheats. And I feel like we're able to kind of convey some of the cheats and the things that we can do to get them to get a little bit higher vert. As far as their accessory work, our goal is fairly simple. We can conjugate it. We're there to either build a weakness or enhance a lever. So depending on what we're trying to look for, I do have a very templated movement of what we're looking at, but we are very quick to change movements as we start to see them move, and we'll bring them out as they're not working anymore. So again, we'll kind of use that as more of our conjugated idea of being able to wave things in and out. Their Saturdays are going to be a little bit more general prep, so more work capacity, oxidative work. So we'll get some loaded walks. They'll also finish their minimum dosage stuff. During their back off week, and so after their 4 weeks of it, on their 4th weeks of it, we'll have a back off. We'll really start to transition into a new phase. For going into the accumulation phase, we get right into more of the drills that they're going to do. So kind of getting a little bit more in depth as far as what they're going to see come combine. We will do a mock combine on one of the later days of their back off week, where we're going to try to hit about 40 to 60% of their maximal volume. So they'll get a couple 20s in. We won't do a full 40 yet. We'll try to feel that out. If they're feeling good, we'll let them go. But we'll try to have a good sense of, when we can really put that work in, as far as being able to hit that amount of volume. Next is going to be our intensification phase. Again, you're going to slowly start to see things look a little bit more like the drills itself. Again, I apologize. I'm working off my phone a little bit, so making sure that I'm hitting everything that I need to. Going into the runs, when we're looking at our start work, really, really big on sprint maintains or excel and maintain. It's something that, I think it allows our athletes to have the rhythm of being able to go from a start phase to an acceleration phase to a top end. And what it is, the way we'll explain it, they'll sprint in a lot amount of yards. So we'll tell them to sprint 10. If I were to have a radar gun on them at 10 yards, whatever speed they are at that speed at 10 yards, they're going to maintain that for 10, 15, 20 yards, whatever we have allotted for them. And again, it really, really is nice to work rhythm. They start to realize how little they have to work to keep propelling forward. So if they do it right, their body's naturally going to continue to keep their speeds up through more of that elastic movement. But on our Mondays, we'll do some sort of 10 or some sort of 20. We'll work up to that, plus some maintains, again, just kind of getting them used to feeling out of 40. I think, growth-wise, it's something that we do now that we didn't do when we first started out. I didn't have the knowledge and the understanding of how to take an athlete that has never sprinted a 40 in the past 5 years to get them to sprint the 40. So it took me a lot longer to develop their 40. So we generally stuck with 10s and 20s, where now I feel like we do a better job of opening them up while keeping them healthy. Their jump work, we'll slowly start bringing in a little bit more broad jump. And we're looking more on a crossover effect and our risk to reward. We always have to look at, do things build on top of each other, or are they hindering it, or are they helping it? We try to keep broad jump low just because of all the additional impact forces. That's usually where we start to see knee aches and everything like that if we bring it in too early. So we try to hide it within, the warm-up. We'll obviously sprint them, which, sprinting will increase a broad jump. A broad jump won't necessarily increase the sprint. So we're always making sure that the crossover effect that we're looking on has a little bit more self-selection on the movements that we pick to make sure that we're working upwards or everything that, the exercise is building on other things that we want to increase. We'll still stay with our heavier main lift. We will start bringing in some unilateral stuff. In the accumulation phase, we will build a lot of body weight unilateral work and a lot of dumbbell unilateral work so we can build a little bit heavier. It's been our experience that we bring in the barbell unilateral work too early. The athletes aren't ready for it, even if the volume or the intensity is incredibly low. And again, if my job is to make sure they're recovered as quickly as they possibly can for the next training session that I need them to get in, I've got to do a really good job of building into it. So this is when you'll finally see your Bulgarian split squats, your split squats, your real foot elevated handles, however you want to say it. But that's when we'll really start to take a look at that. We will move up on the power output of the force velocity curve using the gym aware. As far as accessories, like I said, we started to bring them down a little bit just because we're really starting to bring the work capacity and the volume up of things that have a little bit higher specificity. So we don't want to continue wearing them out with things that we don't feel matter as much. Your Tuesday is going to be, they're just going to do the 20-yard shuttle or the 5-10-5. Again, we'll call it free play. We'll call it self-organized. Once we get done with the warm-up, I'll tell them that that's what we're looking for. I'll leave. I won't even let them see me, so they can't even ask me questions, and they've got to figure it out themselves. I'll come back 5-6 minutes, let them run through one. Generally, I'll leave again, or at least I'll watch from a different viewpoint where they can't ask me questions, and they've got to figure it out. And they really start to learn, how the angle they can make those breaks on, what they need to do to almost slingshot themselves out of it. So having that self-organization is really big, especially with the agility drills or the change of direction drills, just because you're looking at, for us, we had 3 athletes this year. All of them looked different. All of them had different types of angles when they cut at. So there's not one specific advice I can give someone. So getting them to understand what they're looking at is always big. We'll really start to get a little bit more intensive on our med ball and kettlebell throws. We do throw kettlebells. We tend not to hold them. I can give you a backstory as far as why we do that. Long story short, our previous owner decided to buy some rubber kettlebells, where we had all these iron kettlebells, loved them to death. So we brought in these rubber kettlebells. So to get them out of the way, we thought it would just be cool to start throwing them and see if we could break them so we could throw them out and go buy other things. Through that process, through those, we really started to see how much more we could accelerate a kettlebell without having that deceleration pattern, from a swing, from a, any sort of side throw, anything like that. But we could increase the intensity compared to a med ball. Like anything, adding accommodating resistance to a barbell, you're going to expedite the amount of acceleration you can have, and you'll minimize the deceleration. Same thing with the kettlebells. So heavily do recommend, if you have the availability to throw kettlebells, you'll get a good bang for your buck. If it's in a sand pit, we throw ours out in the grass or on a bed of rocks. But we do see a really, really good bang for our buck throwing some kettlebells. Main lift, as far as upper body, we're going to stay heavy with it. We're going to make sure that, there's a good relationship between how strong they are to how many reps they can have at 225. So that's something that will be in a staple fairly in our program until about 7 days out, where they'll get a quick quarter 225 test, so about a quarter of what they can actually do. But making sure we'll do some drop-off sets just to get the work volume in. Same thing with the accessories, just trying to build the levers and build weaknesses. Thursdays, we'll actually start bringing in some loaded work. One thing we try to do, and using our data, with not only our high school athletes, but our college athletes and our pro athletes, we've come to say that, there is a fairly consistent correlation between what their acceleration speed is, their top end speed, and their starting speed is at that 10, 15, 20, and 40-yard mark. So the way we'll kind of load our athletes, so taking their flying 10 or their maximal velocity, and we'll use kind of just basic mathematics as far as the way we're developing it is, if athlete ends up coming and running 1 meter per second in their 10-yard fly, we assume that if we want to work their acceleration phase, which means we're going to work those the angles that they're going to be in when they're actually hitting, that acceleration coming from the startup and the top end. So they're slowly starting to push tall. Their clearance level is starting to get a little bit higher. It's going to be about 75% of their maximal velocity. So again, taking that mathematic of 1 meter per second, that means in 10 yards, that means they'll cover 7.5 yards for every 1 meter per second in their acceleration phase. From there, if we're looking starting speed, they're going to cover about 5.5 yards for every 1 second in their starting speed. So kind of with that data, what we'll do is we will load them under the constraints of what we're looking for, top end acceleration speed or starting speed. We'll load them up with a sled based on the criteria of where they're at individually. Again, if we're looking with that athlete that ran 1 meter per second, and we're looking at acceleration speed, that means if we're looking, if we want to run a 15 meter or 15-yard dash, for every 1 second, they'll cover 7.5. So you're looking at, they've got to cover that within 2 full seconds. So we'll load them until they're within that 94 percentile to 100 percentile of that speed, which again has been awesome for us, especially with our field sport athletes that tend to get a lot out of their drive phase and their acceleration phase. We can really get some good slingshots and some residuals, getting them used to and exposing them to that angle for more of a consistent basis. Again, when you're looking at a 40-yard dash, you're starting phase, or your low clearance level, it's going to be 3 steps at most. So if we're doing 4 10s, you're only getting about 12 steps at that acceleration or that starting phase before you have to start pushing tall into your acceleration phase. So by loading them, we can expose them to those angles for a lot more and get them a little bit more comfortable through it. Our Fridays, again, 3-cone drill. And for those that, aren't familiar with it, it's sprint 5, touch with the right hand, back 5, touch with the right hand. Sprint 5 to a right hand, right corner turn, turn around the cone, and then sprint all the way back. Again, fairly simple, fairly easy to teach. So it doesn't take a whole lot of volume, which again allows us to let our Mondays and Thursdays have a little bit higher volume. Because when it matters, sprinting is going to help everything. So we'd rather expend our energy with something that helps everything underneath the sun, compared to the other way up. We will move in for our dynamic lift. We'll start to get a little bit more speed work through our bench pressing. So it does up the velocity profile when we're looking at trying to develop a different pattern. We still will work out to a heavy triple after that, just again to try to build some additional workload. Saturdays we'll start more on tempo runs. We do keep it very, very basic. They'll say about 60% of whatever their 40-yard dash is, or their initial 40-yard dash, and they'll only do 40s. So they'll do 3 to 4. They'll take about a 3-minute break, and we'll just add more sets or more series onto those to slowly start building that work capacity that they're going to need for the pro day. Finally, this is probably the quickest one, just because the realization phase, everything looks like their sport, which their sport is the combine. Again, we'll stick with the maintains. We do take a lot of the external variables or any sort of load in this, but what we will add is audio variables, and you'll see that more in the change of direction drills. But for our sprint work, we still will do the maintains, getting them used to it. Notice we kind of took a lot of the lifts out. They're heavy lowers purely for maintenance work, nothing else. So we get them in, we get them out. Their broad jump, they'll do a little bit more coupled work. They'll jump into sand pits, they'll jump into the pads, they'll jump into a lot of just different things to make sure that we can minimize the impact of it. Your Tuesdays are going to be more field football specific drills. And again, we tend to bring those in late, only because A, they know how to do them. B, their sport is not football during the combine. They're running in front of scouts that may or may not have any clue what their position is, or what a good route is, or a good back pedal, or anything like that. They have no idea. They're there just the time. So unless we have some heavy hitters or some more elite people where we know their positional coach is going to work them through the drills, we tend to keep the football drills on the back burner. But again, they will tend to recover through those quickly, so we try to use those as an additional recovery modality with them. Wednesday, they'll do more tempo runs. Again, we'll start to build the volume up to make sure that they can handle the workload, not only in the pro day, but to come OTAs. Thursdays, they'll be, what they don't realize, they'll be doing pretty much full 40s. We'll call them fly-ins, we'll call them, blinks, we'll call them, what have you. But essentially they're sprinting 40 yards and we're going to time what their last 10, last 20 is. We'll get a little bit more vertical jump specific. That's when we'll teach them, how to actually jump and hit the vertex. Because again, there is some technique to it, making sure that we're at the apex. Accessory work, pure maintenance. Again, super simple with that. Fridays, we'll start to do more 3-cone and 40-yard, 3-cone and L drill. But one thing we will try to do is we're going to expose them to different variables that are uncontrollable. So different turfs, different coaching styles, different commands. Essentially, we'll just try to not rattle them, but we're going to try to get them to understand that they've got to take a drill and turn it, back into a conscious, understand the on-site adjustments that they need to make and then shut their brain off. You know, a lot of the guys that we work with are smaller school guys that, you know, the first time they're doing this will probably be the biggest crowd that they're under. So being able to expose them to different types of stresses that they're going to see at the pro day is something that I think our guys tend to hit PRs during their pro day. But I also think it helps keep the stress levels low and the injury rate low during the pro day, because again, the stress is the stress, and if they're not ready for it, other things can go. Saturdays, again, we'll keep a little bit more work capacity in. That's only if need be. If they need to do extra football drills, we start to bring in that. We do start to cut out their smaller workouts and again allow for that currency that we just accumulated through the accumulation intensification phase to really, you know, jump and gain the residuals that we got it or that we developed through those two phases. So real quick, kind of the results. You know, pre-post tests I give, you know, those are more, obviously I need to know where they start and where they finish, especially if I'm giving it to agents, they need to know, and I do keep them updated. You know, something that we did differently this year was we finally had access to a timing system. So we were able to do a much better job to bring in or get a little bit more analytics with what their 0 to 10, their 0 to 20, their 20 to 40, the 30 to 40 is, and start to kind of see trends of, you know, maybe where we should put more of our emphasis to and where we shouldn't, where we're not doing a good job. As you can tell, and it is my opinion that I think we did a pretty bad job comparatively in that back 20. I think we could do a lot better compared to the first 20. We're seeing a much better jump in their first 20, which again, there's a lot more things that we can take into account as far as technical aspect, strength and all that stuff, where, you know, an athlete's speed is fairly consistent. What I would have liked to have done is get them to be able to hold that main or that max velocity speed longer. You know, I think we saw a pretty good job in their back 10. But what I would have liked them to do is to get their max speed faster and be able to hold their max speed longer. I think, you know, when you look at Usain Bolt and everybody else, we haven't really gotten a whole lot of people faster when it comes to sprinting, but what they're doing now is they're able to hold their sprint longer. So that's something that I think that we need to take a look at after looking at this data to make sure that we're assessing properly and we are getting them to their top speed and we're getting them to hold it longer. All right, COVID-19 recommendations. Again, hopefully while you're listening to that, you're able to kind of have some thought process about, you know, how we can come back with it. But the things that, you know, I really try to take a look at when we're bringing in our NFL Combine is it's okay to, even if you have a short amount of time to train general to enhance specific, you always got to look over that crossover effect of, you know, Albert Mill always talks about, you increase the squat to a point, you're going to increase the 10-yard dash mechanically. You know, and with everything going on, you know, how much you can dispute different things, you know, the easiest answer, movement works until it doesn't. So, you know, making sure that the general movements that you're doing are going to enhance more specificity later down the line. Like I said, I'm big into cooking. I think that's all we've been able to watch these past couple of weeks. So the way we kind of look at it is, you know, our accumulation phase is gathering the ingredients. As much as we all love steak, you want to buy a steak to build to make chicken. So, you know, making sure that you're picking the right ingredients and you're setting yourself up for success to create the meal and the demands that you really need to make later down the line. Our intensification phase is preparing the ingredients. You know, one of the episodes that I watched last night, it was cooking a fish, and if you cut the fish wrong, you poison everybody that's eating. So understanding that, you know, in the intensification case, your exercise selection is imperative to making sure that what you're looking at is going to give you the results that you want. You know, you talk about the speed ladder, you know, is the speed ladder actually going to create, you know, specificity throughout the drill or the demands of your sport? If you don't feel like it is, you may put it in GPP phase or earlier in the phase and you know, let them get in that regards, but as it gets down the line, it might not have that transfer over. Understanding your super compensation, we're not just trying to compensate, we're trying to get better. So allowing that super compensation curve to really take its place, which means that you're dosing your athletes correctly, not too little, not too much, but you're making sure that you're gaining this good super compensation. Understanding your law of diminishing returns. If you put your sport in too early, it's going to drop off when it matters. It's why we slowly build in and we slow cook our sprint work. If we're sprinting them too long and we haven't built that work capacity, we'll start to see a drop off when it matters at their pro day. Last is self-plug, or not self-plug, but plug for a buddy of mine who I believe is on this. Load wellness management is something that, is going to be something that we bring in with our pro guys and our combine guys. Scott Kuhn has an amazing webinar on the Strength Coach Network that talks about and developing a platform through Excel of how to manage your load, how to manage wellness through RPE and data-driven. Super, super easy. Talks it through to be able to design it through. It's pretty easy to run, but I definitely recommend that anyone that's going to get athletes back goes and gets something like that or designs it. Does bring me on our next slide on my Instagram if that is of interest to you, and Twitter. I put the link at. You can also follow Scotty, Scott Kuhn. I'm sure if you type him in, he's fairly famous. But again, I want to thank you guys for the contact or allowing me to speak. Contact info, cell phone, anything, whatever I can do to really help you guys, or provide some of our experience getting people back. I will be more than happy to at least point you in the right direction, or find somebody that knows exactly a little bit more to the demands that we're talking about.
Well, I appreciate it, Coach. I thought it was awesome. When it comes to gym wear, how do you guys, besides the BBT, like, is that an everyday thing for you guys?
So for our, and I'll kind of go up the ladder for our high school kids. If we feel that we're getting some sort of, if they're doing a lot of stuff outside, we will use it as fatigue management. Going into measuring a vertical jump, seeing a power output. Nice thing about having that gym aware, and I know Scotty had asked, how we can take into effect the displacement or the having a deeper impulse. Gym aware gives me data, which makes, again, my life easy. Through our college athletes, our college and pro athletes, we will use it tremendously. As much as I guess, quote unquote, meathead I am and strength coach I am, I love squats. I love, I love your barbell movements. I don't really care what anybody's max is. So I don't ever really need to max or even load too much with my professional college athletes. I can just give them a velocity to hit. As long as technique and everything is consistent, it makes my life so much easier. We will get RSI work within that. Again, I think that's something that Gym Aware does a great job with. As far as the platform that they developed is we can get an RSI. One of our athletes was something that we were heavily dominated on, and him coming out in his 40, he just kept getting his foot stuck in ground. So we went over and took his RSI. Basically was able to, see how low he was on the chart using the Gym Aware. And so it did adapt how we brought in his plyometric work, how we brought in his jumps. And again, it was able for us to make it more specific to him.
And then, as I know you said you guys slow cook your sprints and your the exchange of some of the lifting movements. How much do you guys vary those the strength movements as you guys go through?
Yeah, so we will waive our dynamic work. So we will just try to create increase intensity and volume. And I say that with a grain of salt. If they are smoked, they're smoked. Again, it goes back to the Gym Aware, why I don't have to worry about it. I'm still getting the very general neural adaptations that I'm looking for. When it comes to their heavier work, I will waive that. I do go off the Louis method of, when you're looking at maximal output or maximal strength, you will create a neural adaptation every week, or it can change every week. It allows me to change the patterns, which is nice. So I'm not, I'm not overdoing anything. I'm not creating any sort of overcompensation because I'm changing out that lift. The accessory work, that's one of those things that works until it doesn't. If we're looking at creating a bigger lever, there's going to be a little bit more hypertrophy. Chances are we'll probably bring that in a little bit longer. If it's something that we're just trying to build a weakness on, and that can be musculature, it can be nervous driven or neural driven, but it also can be getting them to understand a position. So we'll bring in isometrics. We'll bring in just something where we can have the force, bring the force down a little bit to be able to teach exactly what it is, the position that we want it in. So, if we just need to get them to hold a position coming out of their 5-10-5, we can put them in an isometric right there. Do we get any sort of neural adaptation? Probably not for the volume, the time frame that we're using it, but did he learn how to be in that position? Yes. So we'll conjugate those, again, all depending on the view that Jeff and I will kind of see on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I literally just talked to you yesterday, Travis Mash, about his because they use Conjugate, and then I'd say he takes it a step further. He'll, whether it's the band tension chains, they'll go through their dynamic work essentially, and then he'll unload and he'll go for a heavy single, double, or triple, and we went over like their entire program. So it's funny, going over this and, the PAP of it. It was just funny how he took his to a complete extreme in his case. It was, never thought of it. I know the PAP, the post-activation potential, but he definitely took it a step further. He's like, yeah, I'm going for 500. I'm going to put on, 575. Sit there, 15, 20 seconds, go back in, squat. He goes, I'll do the same thing. Like I'm going to, for a heavy triple with bands, I'll get up to it or, close where I have a couple sets left. And then he goes, I'll drop down. He goes, I'll go for, a heavy double max. And it's like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Travis does some amazing stuff, especially, incorporating more Olympic lifting and powerlifting background. I know him. Joe Ken and Brian are all good friends and get to understand that data probably better than anybody.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then, sorry, Scott, I didn't see your question. Scott asked, what's the biggest change you're looking to make with your combine prep work going into the next combine cycle?
So kind of getting back to it, and Scotty, thanks for that question. For your own selfless plug as far as being able to management their load. I'd like to see what that looks like. Our pro guys will use a Whoop, and I've got one on an Omega Wave, which again makes my life easy. Know how to dose them. I can really drive things up. I can place things at the right time. So I think one of the bigger things we're going to do is we're going to do a better job backtracking and seeing exactly how they're doing on a day-to-day basis. I think with that, it's going to allow me to work that back 20 a little bit more. I've always been hesitant on it. Again, kind of going back to what I had said prior, it was something I never really brought in, so I felt comfortable bringing it in. But I got to figure out where our 20 to 30 is, and where we're losing it. I think we did a great job on their 0 to 20. I think we saw a really good drop off. I think we saw about 8% of their flying 10, so their back 10 and the 40. But something was going on between that 20 to 30 that we got to take a look at. And I think if we dose it and properly program it, I think we can get them to hit that, repeated 0.93 or whatever they were on that backside. I don't know if that is a fatigue issue. I don't know if it's a technical issue, but it is something that after going through this data, I didn't get to see, and I wasn't looking at it. So being able to kind of reevaluate things, it's definitely something where I think we can use that first 20 as a slingshot to get them to that top speed and be able to maintain it longer.
Yeah. And then what, in regard, and then there's what? I think neither people in here. Guys, if you want to unmute yourself, please feel free to ask a question. Absolutely, I have no worries about that, so please feel free to do that. When it comes to your guys' loaded sprints, are you guys just using the sleds to do that?
So yeah, so we use sleds right now. We did just purchase a run rocket, which at the time when we got it, I hadn't played with it enough, so I didn't want the first time I used it on something that I kind of already felt comfortable using. That's something that we'll play with now, but I do think it's going to be a whole heck of a lot easier. But right now, all our loaded sprint work, at least our pulls, are through a sled. In the very beginning, in the accumulation phase, again, I don't know if we saw it, 'cause those trying to look at some of the lists on our phone or my phone. We got to we'd superset their Excel work, their start plus maintains with prowler work. Again, very easy for me to get them in position. I can coach the angles. I can shut up and they figure out their angles, but I can transfer it over into their Excel maintains. Again, usually if I've got longer time, it'd be its own separate block. With that, load according, I don't have any sort of statistical data that gives me a idea of how much we load them up enough where I feel like they're coming out of the same angle that we want them to come out, coming at 40. But again, it does allow us to use that as a teaching tool to get them to understand the drive and the angle that they got to hit when they're in their start.
Yeah, and then is there anything else with, let's say, the data tracking aspect? Scott got my mind when I talked to him, and I did his same thing on the Strength Performance Network. Is there anything else that you guys use for data tracking? I know I just heard the whoop band. So anything for readiness and I'd say a readiness questionnaire, anything like that you guys utilize?
So I've got two of my athletes. One of my Olympic soccer girls is on her Omega Wave, and I can, just because we train her remotely as well as on site. It also gives me, when she has to go to camps, I get some really good feedback of how we need to bring her back in. A lot of my NFL guys, my pro guys, all got whoops last year at the NFLPA meeting, which those are funny to give to NFL guys that wear all week. You start to see what actually stresses them and what doesn't. Usually Saturday night stress them a whole heck of a lot more than anything they do on a football field. But those are the two big things. Whoop, again, is nice to use, at least to get an HRV. So you're getting some of the data. Definitely something bringing in is that load management, trying to figure out how we can do it on a more general public, or if it's just a wellness issue. We have them fill out a wellness chart. We use the Gym Aware. Other than that, as far as resources, our resources are fairly limited being in a private sector. I have to beg and plead and do whatever I can to see that, or have our professional athletes do a really good job when I can convince them that they need a piece of equipment.
100% understand that. Oh, I had one more. Let's see, where is it? And then, based on the accessory work, how do you guys go about, choosing if it's, going about their weakness or going about more so of a lever dynamic?
So if something's going on, and bench press is the easiest thing to talk about, as we're increasing levers. For your bigger guys, your linemen, all that stuff, you want to increase their lever just to, have a more advantageous position when they're coming off the chest. You increase triceps. Smaller guys, you increase biceps. So your skill guys, you want to do a little bit more bicep stuff, just because, again, you create a more advantageous lever when it comes to that. Same thing, even with the lower body, if we need to add a little bit more musculature to the hamstrings, if we don't feel like that they're able to be in position that we don't like, it allows us to try to increase on certain aspects. And again, that's where you're going to start seeing a little bit more of your hypertrophy, just I'd like to call it a little bit more selective hypertrophy. When it comes to, athletes that want to gain weight, we tend to realize that we can add a lot of weight on the back without hindering any speed or anything else. So we'll do a whole heck of a lot of pulls, just to try to hide some muscle back there. We don't lose any range of motion. We don't lose any, there's no counterproduction of speed. So it's a really nice, quick way to put on 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pounds, without limiting any factors.
And then I know you just brought it up. What are some of the considerations that, off the top of your head, you would think of, I'd say, for their last, 20 yards of the 40, what are some of your thought processes in your head of how to maintain that more?
So what I think I would like to time it. I didn't get a time there 20 to 30. It just never crossed my mind to get it as they're running a 40. I should have done it, but didn't. I think one of the things that we should have had them do was a little bit longer flying movements. So I think we should have got up to the 20 to 25 to 30 flies. I think I could have progressed comfortably the wickets to longer. That was something we did with one of our athletes last year. It was stuck at 4.55. We needed to get him and the fours, and I just couldn't open him up. He's a 6'2" receiver that just refused to open up, which makes sense as a receiver. He's not going to open up because he's always got to prepare to cut. So we kind of took a big old step back and went purely, quote unquote track-esque, and we're hitting full flying 30s through the wickets, but also out on the track, which seemed to have huge carryover. We had a 3-week wave, dropped down, went 4.46. I think it had a lot of things to do. I think it better field position, all that stuff. But I do think that longer sprint and forcing him to hold that higher velocity longer played a huge role. So just exposing them to that, I think, it should have some really payoff next year when we do it.
Yeah, that is one of the, what was that? I think last Thursday. It was last Thursday with Tony Holler, and I think Adrian was in it. After I was talking to him, and luckily I've kind of like yourself, I've been able to talk to you and other coaches, and kind of had the same conversation where he gave a coach that I use the wickets, kind of obviously the image toward in their if it was a flying 20 or, a 30 meters within that distance. Sorry, I know my Wi-Fi sucks right now. And he said he would tell people or football coaches to utilize the wickets within their 20-meter or 30-meter fly to give them the guidance of a video evidence, so to speak, on where that lacking part, slow down part is, where they're not holding it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to build it in. We even thought about getting them in a wicket and then out of the wicket. So getting, 3, 4, 5 steps within the wicket and then allowing them to get out of the wicket to excel. I think that's a funny thing that, when you look at history of track, and kind of estimating the data, I want to say Usain Bolt went 0.81 and was flying as fast as 10 meter, where, most people are hanging around. Even Jesse Owens was estimated about the 0.86. So if you look at it, we've only necessarily gotten about 3% faster. They've got data back in BC about how guys in flip-flops were running 23 miles an hour. So if you're looking at, top speed, we really haven't comparatively got that much faster. We just get to our speed faster and we hold our speed longer and we decelerate slower. We're not actually running faster. So it does kind of push me a little bit away from the flying 10 recording a little bit. and to get them to whatever their flying 10 is, get them to learn how to hold it longer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and like you said, getting them going back to the acceleration aspect, out of their 40 or their start, being able to understand that concept and being able to load it further and be able to hold it further, that's something that can be, I'd say worked and adjusted within reason, where kind of like we were just saying, the max velocity, where is the actual, how much of an increase can we actually get, especially with what you just said.
Well, I think it's hard too. And when you look at that crossover effect, we know all these things that can art, we know all these things that can enhance an acceleration. One thing that enhances maximum velocity is sprinting. You want to increase an acceleration phase, you do a couple jumps. You want to increase their 10 meters, you get them heavier in the squat. You want to increase maximum velocity, you sprint them. But in sports or people that don't touch maximum velocity in so long, the question becomes, how much work can I give them and expose them to those demands before it becomes too much of a risk?
Yeah. Oh. Sorry, that's my dog. He's slurping the water. But no, I sorry about that. I just want to say thank you. I know you've had a absolute crazy couple months since your baby. I want to say thank you. Obviously, it's funny because I had someone email me from the area. It's like, acceleration's like 30 minutes away. It's like, yeah. It's like, if I had a question, I could probably go over there and ask. It's like, I don't know where you're going. He goes, why would you do that? It's like, why not? Like, there's no reason. Like, I would 100% reach out to someone that is hands down probably one of the smartest people that I've been able to talk to and just hear about from other people. So I just want to say thank you for your time and your willingness to present what you guys do and how you guys go about it. And it's a funny world, strength and conditioning, because I'd say people that are let's say we're in New Jersey and you're 5 miles away. Most people aren't. They just don't like each other. I'm not that person. And you guys are so close in the sense, 30, 40 minutes. But being able to learn from anyone in the world, whether it's fucking 10 minutes down the road to, other side of the country, that's the reason I did this. And, whether it's from, Brett Shannon and talking to him, I don't know how many times, it comes down to it. It's like people have to put themselves in the position, I'd say to, have the willingness to open up and, be honest, where you guys do what you do and you guys do it so well, and the result speaks for itself. And Scott said the same thing. I think it was with, becoming a straight coach that you guys kind of put them in that, that realm. So it's unbelievable what you guys do, and it's beyond appreciated. For myself, I appreciate your time and obviously what you and your brother do, and your entire staff. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate everything that you're doing for strength and conditioning in general.
Man, that means the world to me, man. I think when it's all said and done, our job as professionals is to build better humans, and that's within the profession. That's with our athletes. It's with everybody that we come in contact with. I always battle back and forth with the whole social media thing, and how much do we want of it, and how little do we want of it. But I think I always liked this profession was because the athletes got to be the stars. Our what the work we did, nobody sees. What the work we do. I mean, what you've been doing with this thing has been absolutely incredible. And it's a platform to coaches like me, and I don't speak. I don't do a whole lot of speaking engagements. I'm probably, as you can tell, a little bit with me talking today and everything. But, you know, giving platforms to get better. I think that's what it's all, you know, the biggest thing that we can possibly do. And, you know, like you said, coming from being a private sector, it's always hard because sales is key. But it takes the humbleness to say, all right, I'm going to go figure out who the best guy is. I'm going to go figure out, you know, how to get better. And I think, you know, I think I try as hard as I can to reach out to anybody that I feel can make me, which makes my athletes better. So, you know, I think that was an absolute amazing, you know, job what you're doing. And
well, I appreciate it. Well, and it's not like with Scott over there riffing off, I don't know how many things that people email me about. Say, well, I don't know what this is and this. And then you got people like Scott that just goes on the other side of the earth when it comes to data management and stuff like that. So, no,
I'm the dumbest one in the room. That's my goal is to always be humble enough to know I'm the dumbest guy in the room, and I take pride in making sure when I set up or, you know, and Scotty's, it's funny how I remember him as a 8th grader, and now, you know, there's very rarely every program that I don't give him a call and ask him. He was developing another platform yesterday for our general public, so I made him take a look over it to make sure that everything was was right. So yeah, it's cool to see, you know, all these kids and grow and make sure that they turn better out than we did.
Yeah, and I couldn't have said it better. You know, it's I think it's one thing that is changing. I think the changes now with people willing to share. Some people think they have the secret sauce. You know, like when we first talked, going back and it's like, oh, you know, I could do this, and then you look it up and it's like, oh shit, you know, Charlie Francis was already doing it. So, you know, people allowing themselves to open up and, you know, like I said, it's, for me, it's a privilege to be able to, you know, listen to you guys and, you know, other people, you know, whether it's a collegiate or a private sector, you know, it's beyond appreciated, what you guys do. And, like I said, I appreciate your guys' time today and everyone else on here. And I'm probably going to give both you and Scott a call because I have like 8 other questions based on something else.
Pass Bob,
but
I think communication
well, I appreciate it.
Are amazing.
So, but thank you, Coach. I appreciate it. I hope, you know, you and your wife are healthy and safe as well as the baby. So, everyone else, thank you. I appreciate your guys' time. And everyone, have a good night. If you have any questions, you can find Coach Mike on Twitter. I think it's Sir Nikols, right?
Sir Nikols. Did that when I was 22 and kept on with it.
I don't know. It's something that I can always remember. Or you can also go, I think it's just Acceleration, or is it Acceleration Pro?
Yeah, right.
I can't remember. There's like 2 of them.
Acceleration Pro. Acceleration was taken, so we had to go Acceleration Pro.
Okay, all right, that makes more. All right.
Yeah.
I was looking today. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right, but yeah, if you ever need to contact them, they're always on social media as well. And then if there's any other questions, and if you send them to me, I can direct them to Coach Mike as well. So once again, thank you, Coach. I appreciate it, and everyone else, thank you. I do apologize for going about a half hour over, but it was well worth it. No, thank you. And everyone else, have a good night. Be with your families. Enjoy the rest of the night.
Thank you, guys.